Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video. So after spending a little bit of time working on videos talking about problematic and anti-feminist content creators, I figured today I would dive back into the world of book reviews and touch myself with a little more Colleen Hoover for you guys. I thought this would be a quick, light video for me to make, and I could not have been more wrong. This book review has consumed my life for the last 9-10 days. I have thought of nothing else. I have done far too much work. I've been staying up till stupid hours in the early morning, and I am feeling all of the feelings. So today we are going to be reviewing Colleen Hoover's It Ends With Us. Since I reviewed Verity a couple of weeks back, I have been bombarded with Colleen Hoover related posts all over my Reddit feed, no matter how much I try and tell them that I am not actually interested in Colleen Hoover. It's just a work thing. We're not that close. And most recently, I have been seeing people furious at the leaked photos from the It Ends With Us film. People are saying it's bad casting, bad costumes, bad hair. This is not how I pictured my favourite book character, and so on. So I figured I would finally give the book a read so I could understand and or have a giggle at all of the outrage. Now this book is marketed and categorised by Amazon as a new adult romance. The book's blurb also paints it as just a simple, straightforward romance book. It paints it as this romantic love triangle with a complicated male love interest. The whole, oh, he's not perfect, but I bet I can change him sort of thing. The problem is this book is not a romance novel, or it shouldn't be a romance novel. This is actually a book about an abusive relationship and domestic violence. I can't help but thinking all the marketing and promotion around this book is not only wrong, but it's incredibly harmful. So going forward into this video, content warnings for abuse and domestic violence and similar themes. I'll also be talking about my own personal experience with that in order to draw some parallels between the fiction and real life. It's difficult stuff to talk about, it's difficult stuff to hear, so if you need to skip this video, that's fine. I'm not going to hold it against anyone, that's absolutely okay. I do think it's important though for us survivors to never feel ashamed of sharing our stories and talking about our experiences, and if by talking about these things I can help other people recognise the signs of abuse and how to get away, then it'll be worth it. That's my goal in talking about this stuff and what I've experienced. It's a difficult topic when we're talking about books and media and that sort of thing, because domestic violence and abuse is something that absolutely should be portrayed in fictional materials that we're consuming. Books, TV programs, films, all of it. A good portrayal can help people understand what it's like to be in that situation. It can help people understand people's motives, why they might stay, why they might leave, what signs to look out for, that sort of thing. But like all difficult topics, it needs to be handled with respect and sensitivity. If you've seen my ridiculously long video reviewing the Harrow Fair books, you'll know that I am really against books that portray abusive behaviours as romance, and Colleen Hoover is also very guilty of doing that. I think there is an important place for discussing abuse in fiction, but it needs to be done carefully and respectfully and never glamorized, and it shouldn't be used as a shocking gimmick or plot twist like Colleen Hoover does in this book. That said, overall I do have mixed feelings about the book. There are some bits that I really liked, there are some really good parts. I particularly liked how Hoover drew parallels between the abusive relationship our main character saw and witnessed her parents go through and the one she's in herself. I enjoyed the parallels there. I liked the whole aspect of repeating cycles and breaking the cycle and all that sort of thing. I actually have my own poem about that called Heroes, in which I kind of look at the parallels between how the men in my family treated women and then the abuse I put up with from men later in my own life. So like I say, I think this is something that literature can and should cover. It just needs to be done in the right way. Sorry, Kyra's snoring in the bathroom and it's going to echo around the whole house, so the mic will probably be picking up, sorry. But overall my issue is I think this book does more harm than good. So in this video I'm going to be kind of looking at a bunch of different things. We're going to be starting with a really in-depth chapter by chapter review of this book. I'm going to talk about my thoughts on the book overall, the good points, the bad points, kind of give you a bit of a summary and a mini essay on what I think of it, and then we're also going to have a look at how the readers and fans have responded to this book and how this book is affecting real people and their thoughts and actions and so on. So let's jump into it. Chapter 1 opens with our narrator sat on a ledge thinking about other people's suicides. This involves some pretty insensitive jokes at the expense of suicide victims. It's not the worst thing in the book, but it's in poor taste nonetheless. Also, I do have to ask, why does Colleen Hoover insist on opening so many of her books by having the main character think about or witness deaths of strangers? I've not read that many Colleen Hoover books, but the ones I have, this always seems to happen. Very odd. Anyway, I have no idea why she includes the suicide joke, but she does use it to segue into the fact that she's just had to give a eulogy at her dad's funeral. The funeral which took place in Plethora, Maine. That's where she's from, Honorata, Plethora, Maine. Not just any Plethora, but specifically Plethora in Maine, which she has to tell us many, many, many times. Normally it's a thing in a book where you just say like, oh, I'm from city, state, when it's set in America, that is. City, state, done. And then after that, you can just refer to it as city, 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 whatever, right? No, not Colleen Hoover. It's always Plethora, Maine, Plethora, Maine. This book needed an editor. And if it had an editor, what were they paid for? Our protagonist tells us that her dad was the prodigious Andrew Bloom, owner of the most successful real estate agency within city limits. Remember, that's Plethora, Maine. Husband of the highly adored Jenny Bloom, the most revered teaching assistant in all of Plethora, Maine. Meanwhile, we learn that her name is Lily Bloom. Yes, really. And she is totally not like the other girls. She is, in fact, that strange girl with the erratic red hair who once fell in love with a homeless guy and brought great shame upon her entire family. I think there was a Shakespeare play about that, wasn't there? As she's thinking about her dad's funeral, sat on the edge of this rooftop of this building, a person appears. I'm tough for my size and can probably hold my own in most cases, but I'm too comfortable right now to be on a rooftop alone with a strange man in the middle of the night. I might fear for my safety and feel the need to leave, and I really don't want to leave. As I said before, I'm comfortable. I'm totally not like the other girls. I care more about my comfort than my risk of getting raped and murdered. Feeling unsafe is just an inconvenience and not an actual problem that millions of women have to suffer through every day. Yeah, I could get raped and murdered, but the bigger inconvenience is I might have to move from my comfy spot because I'm not like the other girls. I hate this. I hate it all so much. Of course, it turns out that this is a man and he is beautiful, but only in the way that all Colleen Hoover's love interests are beautiful. They're all the same generic man. Even leaning over the rail, I can tell he's tall. Broad shoulders create a strong contrast to the fragile way he's holding his head in his hands. I can barely make out the heavy rise and fall of his back as he drags in deep breaths and forces them back out when he's done. Yeah, that's generally how breathing works. He appears to be on the verge of a breakdown. So I have a rant about this generic man thing later, don't worry. But first, before we get more descriptions of this man, violence! He spins around and kicks one of the patio chairs behind him. The guy doesn't stop with just one kick. He kicks the chair repeatedly, over and over. He's now standing over it, his hands clenched in fists at his side. To be honest, I'm a little envious. Here this guy is, taking his aggression out on patio furniture like a champ. He's obviously had a poopy day, as have I, but whereas I keep my aggression pent up until it manifests in the form of passive aggressiveness, this guy actually has an outlet. Neither of these are healthy reactions. Pent up towards passive aggression and letting it all out as like violent criminal damage, neither is healthy. I'm just going to say it now. Both of these people need a lot of therapy. I do have to say though, if this is your introduction to a person, this level of like violence, because it is physically damaging property and kicking things and beating them, like it's violence. It's not violence against a person, but it's violence, you know? If this is the level of anger and violence they're displaying at your first meeting, run. Just leave. Don't get involved with them. This is all of the red flags at once, you know? Now sure, it could be a one-off thing. People get angry sometimes. Anger is a completely normal emotion that everyone has at different points in their life. I know when I was a teenager and I didn't know I was autistic yet, so I was like a little bubbling bundle of emotions at all time, you know? I was constantly in this state of fluctuating between confusion and loneliness and burnout and meltdown, and a lot of that did manifest as anger that I took out on myself. So I understand what it's like. Please don't think I'm shaming people for feeling anger. Not at all. What I'm saying is that this level of externally directed anger is worrying and concerning and a massive red flag. His excuse is that he's had a tough day at work, so he's decided to damage some stranger's property. A 30-year-old man should not be behaving like this, and it's a concerning indicator of what his future behaviour could and will end up being. So in real life, if you see people acting like this, be wary of them. Everyone has bad days at work, but we don't all go around taking it out on other people's belongings. This was actually a tactic that my own abusive ex and my dad both used before their behaviour would escalate in other ways. You know, throwing things around, damaging stuff. Usually it was my belongings. Breaking things, throwing plates against walls. My ex would throw things at me to try and like hurt me and hit me with them and stuff like that. So this is a common tactic that abusers use, and it's like a sign that someone can be abusive if they will damage property and stuff around them and that sort of thing. Like I'm not saying that all people who damage things are abusers, but I'm saying that abusers often will damage things to this extent. Often. Does that make sense? Anyway, for some reason though, Lily is like, that's normal. I'm not scared of this clearly violent, angry man who's causing property damage right now because, oh look, he has muscles. She's like, oh, this man could be dangerous. Oh, wouldn't that be an inconvenience? And then she sees him acting dangerously and she's like, but he is kind of hot, so maybe I'll stay. She's an idiot. Lily Bloom is an idiot. Seriously, Colleen Hoover, setting feminism back by over a century with every book she publishes. I noticed for the first time how his shirt doesn't fit him very well around his biceps. It fits him everywhere else, but his arms are huge. He begins fishing around in his pockets until he finds what he's looking for, and in what I'm sure is probably an effort to release even more of his aggression, he lights up a joint. Ah yes, property damage and drugs, the two signs of a healthy, put-together, mature man. He finally spots her and asks who she is, and I feel his voice in my stomach. That's not good. Voices should stop at the ears, but sometimes, not very often at all actually, a voice will penetrate past my ears and reverberate straight down through my body. He has one of those voices. Deep, confident, and a little bit like butter. That's how I like my butter, deep and confident. Lily, I finally say. I hate my voice. It sounds too weak to even reach his ears from here, much less reverberate inside his body. I can't help but notice how unfortunately cute he is. No, cute is an insult. This guy is beautiful, well manicured, smells like money, looks to be several years older than me. His eyes crinkle in the corners as they follow me, and his lips seem to frown even when they aren't. When I reach the side of the building that overlooks the street, I lean forward and stare down at the cars below, trying not to appear impressed by him. I can tell by his haircut alone that he's the kind of man people are easily impressed by. I refuse to feed his ego. Not that he's done anything to make me think he even has one, but he is wearing a casual Burberry shirt, and I'm not sure I've ever been on the radar of someone who could casually afford one. His voice is a drug in itself. I kinda want to hear it again, so I throw a question in his direction. He looks at me. Like, really looks at me. His eyes meet mine and he just stares. Hard. Like all my secrets are right there on my face. I've never seen eyes as dark as his. He smiles. It's Ryle, he says. Ryle Kincaid. So we have a wannabe James Bond with none of the charisma, charm, or class. Nice. But, okay, this is my rant. This is rant time with Rachel. Why do all the men in Colleen Hoover's books look the same? He's tall, rich, with a deep, confident voice, and muscles. So many muscles. He has so many muscles that even his muscles have muscles. He's stoic. He rarely speaks. He never emotes. He never even breathes loudly, unless it's in the presence of me, the one woman who can break through his hard outer shell. Is it too much to ask for Colleen Hoover to have any other kind of man as a love interest? What about a short guy with like a cute little dad bod? Or my kind of guy, which is like average height and skinny with long hair and a beard? Give me a guy who works an average wage for a job he loves. Give me a guy who's modest and soft-spoken and snorts when he laughs at stupid puns and talks about Lego all the time. Is it too much to ask for a guy like that? Lily then reveals that her full name is, shockingly, Lily Blossom Bloom, and she wants to be a florist.
In the romance community, I think everyone, like, you kind of want to stand out. So I try to come up with unique names that people haven't really used before, but it's usually street signs. Miles, Ridge, Archer, what was Atlas? It's a town nearby where I live. Flying home a few months ago and saw the name Leeds. You know, it's a town in England, and so now my main character is going to be in Leeds in this next one.
I hate Colleen Hoover. These two strangers then play a game called Naked Truths, which keeps coming up throughout the book, and it is stupid. Basically, they just tell each other secrets. That's it. Lily tells him about her dad. My father died this week. As his daughter, I loved him, but as a human, I hated him. I can feel him watching me for a moment, and then he says, I like that, your honesty. He likes my honesty. I think I might be blushing. My father was abusive. Not to me, to my mother. He would get so angry when they fought that sometimes he would hit her. When that happened, he would spend the next week or two making up for it. He would do things like buy her flowers or take us out to a nice dinner. Sometimes he'd buy me stuff because he knew I hated it when they fought. When I was a kid, I found myself looking forward to the nights they would fight because I knew if he hit her, the 2 weeks that followed would be great. I pause. I'm not sure I've even admitted that to myself. Of course, if I could, I would have made it where he never touched her. But the abuse was inevitable with their marriage, and it became our norm. When I got older, I realised that not doing something about it made me just as guilty. I spent most of my life hating him for being such a bad person, and I'm not so sure I'm much better. Maybe we're both bad people. Ryle looks over at me with a thoughtful expression. Lily, he says pointedly, there is no such thing as bad people. We're all just people who sometimes do bad things. I open my mouth to respond, but his words strike me silent. We're all just people who sometimes do bad things. I guess that's true in a way. No one is exclusively bad, nor is anyone exclusively good. Some are just forced to work harder at suppressing the bad. I hate that this is his response to hearing about an abuser. You hear that a man ruined her childhood, repeatedly abused her mother, and has done all these atrocious things, and your response is, yeah, but he's not really a bad person, is he? No, he was a bad person, sorry. He might have done some good things at times, but he was a bad person who did the occasional okay thing to make up for the badness. That still makes him a bad person. In my mind, this response here is another red flag for Ryle. If a man said this to me, no, he would be gone. None of that. And I could understand if Hoover put this in here to show us how problematic Ryle is for thinking like this about an abuser, and how it's like he's just making early excuses for his behaviour that comes later in the book. But this line, this idea of there's no good or bad people, only people who do good or bad things, this becomes a central theme of the book. This isn't one abuser making an excuse for another abuser. This is Colleen Hoover making excuses for multiple abusers, and I'm not okay with that. This is a terrible, terrible theme for the book. Normally, I kind of like to look at the shades of grey in something on my channel. I'm very kind of like against thoroughly condemning people for this or that or whatever. I'm like, no, let's look at the whole picture. We can see that they do some good here and some bad here. Like all of this sort of thing, yeah. But when it comes to domestic violence and abuse, I can't be that grey. This may be my own personal bias. This may just be like my trauma showing through, and I'll happily admit that. But it doesn't change my opinion. I don't think there's shades of grey when it comes to this stuff. Sometimes good people with good intentions mess up, and we should be absolutely forgiving of that. Mistakes are normal, and sometimes I think the internet forgets that with people. People hold on to grudges for a long time online and get repeatedly angry about things like, oh, so-and-so said this one thing like 6 years ago, and now they're a terrible person, and I'm like, no, just let people grow and change and move on, and let's not hold grudges about that sort of thing. It's not these like one-off mistakes I'm talking about. When it comes to something like domestic violence and abuse, especially with like the examples in this book, especially with my own abuser, Johnny, like, these weren't one-off mistakes. These were repeated patterns of behaviour. Like, with Johnny, I was his, like, fourth victim. The fourth woman that he'd been emotionally and physically abusive with. That's not a one-off mistake of, oh, he's probably a good person and made a mistake. No, that's a bad person repeatedly doing bad things, and you can't change my mind. When a person knows they're causing harm and keeps choosing to do that same action that they know is causing harm over and over and over, how can they be anything but a bad person? I don't know, some people might disagree with me, and if you do, that's fine, but just know you're not going to change my mind on this, because here we are. Anyway, Lily talks about her dad's funeral and how she was forced to speak about him and then just decided to not, which is fair enough, I think. Apparently she got up and said, "Hello, my name is Lily Bloom, daughter of the late Andrew Bloom. Thank you for all joining us today as we mourn his loss. I want to take a moment to honour his life by sharing with you 5 great things about my father. The first thing..." I look down at Ryle and shrug. "That's it." He sits up. "What do you mean?" I take a seat on my lounge chair and lie back down. I stood up there for 2 solid minutes without saying another word. There wasn't one great thing I could say about that man, so I just stared silently at the crowd until my mother realised what I was doing and had my uncle remove me from the podium. Ryle tilts his head. "Are you kidding me? You gave the anti-eulogy at your own father's funeral." I nod. "I'm not proud of it, I don't think." I mean, if I had my way, he'd have been a much better person and I'd have stood up there and talked for an hour. Ryle lies back down. Wow, he says, shaking his head. You're kind of my hero. You just roasted a dead guy. No, she got up there and refused to talk kindly about an abuser. She didn't roast some dead guy. Like, way to miss the point, Ryle. Seriously. So Lily then asks Ryle to share a story to top hers. I'm not sure I can. I roll my eyes. Yeah, you can. Don't make me feel like the worst person out of the two of us. Tell me the most recent thought you've had that most people wouldn't say out loud. He pulls his hands up behind his head and looks me straight in the eye. I want to F you. Wow. What a romantic. What a catch. Yay. I call this segment Dating Advice with me. Pro tip for you. If you ever meet a woman and she, you're basically complete strangers, you're alone on a roof together, this could be a potentially dangerous situation, and she's not shown any signs of interest in you so far, do not say this to her. My mouth falls open, then I clamp it shut again. I think I might be speechless. He shoots me a look of innocence. You asked for the most recent thought, so I gave it to you. You're beautiful. I'm a guy. If you're into one-night stands, I would take you downstairs to my bedroom, and I would F you. I can't even look at him. His statement makes me feel a multitude of things all at once. One of them better be nauseous, because that's how I'm feeling right now. Well, I'm not into one-night stands. I figured as much. He says, your turn. He's so nonchalant. He acts like he didn't just stun me into silence. I need a minute to regroup after that one, I say with a laugh. I tried to think of something with a little shock value, but I can't get over the fact he just said that. Out loud. Maybe because he's a neurosurgeon, I never pictured someone so educated throwing around the word F so casually. I gather myself, somewhat, and then say, okay, since we're on the subject, the first guy I had sex with was homeless. We've heard about this twice now in the book, and we're already like 10 pages in, and we learn about this story later. It becomes quite a big part of the book, but I honestly have to say, if I was this guy, I would be a little offended that, this woman that I lost my virginity to is going around telling people I'm just some homeless guy she had sex with. Like, there's more to him than that. Not much more, but at least a bit. It just feels very disrespectful, But anyway, Lily tells more of the story. I grew up in Maine. We lived in a fairly decent neighbourhood, but the street behind our house wasn't in the best condition. Our backyard butted up to a condemned house adjacent to 2 abandoned lots. I became friends with a guy named Atlas who stayed in the condemned house. No one knew who was living there other than me. I used to take him food and clothes and stuff until my father found out. What did he do? My jaw tightens. I don't know why I brought this up when I still force myself not to think about him on a daily basis. He beat him up. That's as naked as I want to get about that subject. Your turn. So, I'll tell you this now about the structure. The book is split into 2 parts. You have, her meeting Ryle and falling in love with him in part 1, and in that part you also have, kind of flashbacks told through journal entries that are, what 15-year-old Lily did witnessing her parents' abuse and meeting this guy Atlas, the homeless guy, and so on. These journal entries might be kind of useful and interesting if Lily hadn't just entirely summarized them there. That's it. That's basically all that happens in them. It's just, I don't know. You get this summary here, and then you read the actual journal entries, and they don't provide any new or interesting information. I guess maybe bits about the parents and stuff, but again, she's already kind of summarized and told us what happened, so it's not like we're getting anything new. It's kind of frustrating. I just think Colleen Hoover struggles with pacing and planning her books and structuring her books, and I really think she'd benefit from taking a course on how to structure a novel, Ryle then shares again, and he shares the most disgraceful, horrible, disgusting thing about him. This annoys me so much. Apparently, the worst, most horrifying thing about Ryle is he doesn't want to get married. That's it. That's apparently worse than having an abusive father. This is so similar to the narrative that Colleen Hoover pushed in Verity, that apparently the worst thing a person can do is not want marriage and kids, and it's so stupid and offensive, and it really, really bothers me. Why is Colleen Hoover so pro-pushing babies onto people? The thought of marriage repulses me, he says. I'm almost 30 years old and I have no desire for a wife. I especially don't want children. The only thing I want out of life is success. Lots of it. But if I admit that out loud to anyone, it makes me sound arrogant. Professional success or social success? He says both. Anyone can have children, anyone can get married, but not everyone can be a neurosurgeon. I get a lot of pride out of that, and I don't just want to be a great neurosurgeon, I want to be the best in my field. You're right. It does make you sound arrogant. No, it doesn't. I actually think that's respectable, Ryle. A lot of people refuse to admit they might be too selfish to have children. He shakes his head. Oh, I'm way too selfish to have children. And I'm definitely way too selfish to be in a relationship. Now, there's something about this that annoys me even more, in that Ryle is clearly aware of his flaws, yet he does nothing to change them or better himself, and yet still jumps into a relationship with Lily, ignoring everything wrong with him, knowing that it's going to hurt her, you know? He knows he's selfish, he knows that makes him bad in relationships, yet he goes into a relationship still being selfish and not doing anything to change that. Like, you see how that's bad, right? If you want an analogy for this, right, imagine I am wearing a glove covered in razor blades, and I say to someone, I can't hold your hand because my glove will cut you, right? And then this person says, oh, well, I'm looking to hold hands with someone. And I say, now I'd quite like to hold hands with someone. What are my choices? I can either A, not hold their hand because I know it's going to hurt them with my razor blade glove. B, I don't know if I was doing numbers or letters. B, take off the glove and then hold their hand, knowing that I've changed myself to make myself less harmful so I can go into holding hands. Or C, hold the hand anyway with the razor blade glove and hurt them, knowing I'm going to hurt them, and then take no responsibility for hurting them. That's what Ryle chose to do, and it's messed up. And if you think I'm exaggerating here, I'm not, because he clearly knows he has more bad traits than just being selfish, and yet he goes into this relationship anyway knowing he's going to hurt Lily, and this is why I have issues and I'm angry words. So, Ryle tries to get Lily to sleep with him, and she says no, and he keeps pushing and attempting to chip away at her boundaries, which is not okay, and tells us a lot about him and what a douchebag he is. My face is on fire. I could never sleep with someone if I didn't see it going anywhere. I say this out loud, but my words lack conviction when I say it to him. He drags in a slow, long breath, then rolls onto his back. Not that kind of girl, huh? He says with a trace of disappointment in his voice. I match his disappointment. I'm not sure I'd ever want to turn him down if he made a move, but I might have thwarted that possibility. If you wouldn't sleep with someone you just met. His eyes met mine again. Exactly how far would you go? But before he can push her boundaries even more, Ryle gets a work call and has to leave, but not before one last incredibly creepy thing. He considers me for a moment, then holds up a finger. Don't move, he says, reaching for his phone again. He walks closer and holds it up as if he's about to snap a picture of me. I almost object, but don't know why. I'm fully clothed. It just doesn't feel that way for some reason. He snaps a picture of me lying in the lounge chair, my arms relaxed above my head. I have no idea what he plans to do with that picture, but I like that he took it. Blah, blah, blah. He takes the photo. It's kind of creepy. He walks away, and she's like, probably never see him again. Boo-hoo-hoo. The end of the chapter. Chapter 2. Lily's mum calls her and makes some excuses for the whole funeral thing. She thinks Lily must have just frozen up out of stage fright. So that's the end of that plot point. Done. Fine. No drama there. Then Lily goes and finds some old journals she kept as a teenager. I refuse to admit that I kept a diary when I was younger because that was so cliche. Instead, I convinced myself that what I was doing was cool because it wasn't technically a diary. I addressed each of my entries to Ellen DeGeneres because I began watching her show the first day it aired in 2003 when I was just a little girl. I watched it every day after school and was convinced Ellen would love me if she got to know me. I wrote letters to her regularly until I turned 16, but I wrote them like one would write entries in a diary, and she also never sends them to Ellen. They're just in a diary. This device is something. If you've watched any of my other videos or you follow me over on Goodreads, you might know I love a good epistolary novel. Love it. Alice Walker's The Colour Purple is one of my favourite books of all time. I've spoken in videos before about writers like Janice Hallett and their modern take on epistolary novels using like text communication and emails and stuff like that to tell the story. Brilliant. Love it. Telling stories through letters and other communication like that can be so fascinating because, you can do all sorts of really cool creative stuff with it. You can have unreliable narrators, you can have biases, you can have different people telling the same story from different perspectives, or like disagreeing on details and all sorts of really, really cool stuff. These novels can be creative and I love them, but I don't understand why Colleen Hoover decided to do this. It doesn't have a point. Making Lily's journals letters to Ellen, other than to add in a few pop culture references that have aged really, 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 really badly, doesn't make any sense. They don't add anything to the book that you wouldn't have got from regular journal entries. I struggle to see the point other than just making the audience cringe, and it really, really bothers me. I grabbed the one from when I was 15 years old. Dear Ellen, I think lots of people would like to see you outside of work. I always wondered what you're like at home when it's just you and Portia and the cameras aren't around. Maybe the producers can give her a camera and sometimes she can just sneak up on you and film you doing normal things, like watching TV or cooking or gardening. She could film you for a few seconds without you knowing, and then she could scream, "Ellen at home," and scare you. It's only fair since you love pranks. It aged poorly, didn't it? This aged really poorly. I was in bed shuffling cards. I know that sounds weird, but it's just something I do. I don't even know how to play cards. But when my parents get into fights, shuffling cards calms me down sometimes and gives me something to focus on. Oh, this is just like that Taylor Swift song, you know? You wear short skirts, I shuffle playing cards. A classic. I joke. But seriously, I get doing things like this to distract yourself from difficult stuff. When my dad used to get angry when I was a kid, I used to either juggle or hide in cupboards, so I get it. Anyway, she ends up looking out of her window and seeing some teenage boy hiding out in the abandoned house behind hers. Next journal entry. Okay, so I found out who the guy is, and yes, he's still going over there. It's been 2 days now and I still haven't told anyone. His name is Atlas Corrigan. What is with these names, Colleen? His name is Atlas Corrigan and he's a senior, but that's all I know. I asked Katie who he was when she sat next to me on the bus. She rolled her eyes and told me his name, but she said, "I don't know anything else about him, but he smells." She scrunched up her nose like it grossed her out. I wanted to yell at her and tell her he can't help it, that he doesn't have any running water, but instead I just looked back at him. I might have said a little too much because he caught me looking at him. I think now is a good time to talk about the age differences in the relationships in this book, because I have thoughts. Lily and Atlas have an age difference of 3 years. He's a senior, which makes him 18, actually coming up to 19. He talks about his 19th birthday coming up. Lily, on the other hand, is 15. And it seems like quite a young 15 from the immature way she writes. Sure, 3 years isn't really much amongst adults, you know? A 41-year-old and a 44-year-old, you wouldn't bat an eyelid, would you? Not at all. But in this case, you have an adult and a person who is nowhere near being an adult. So it does make a difference. Can the 18-year-old man please step away from the underage child? Is that too much to ask? But that's not the only age gap in this book. In the present day, Lily is just turned 23 and Ryle is turning 30 as this first bit happens. So 23 and 30. Not as bad, definitely not illegal, but she's clearly young and naive for 23. She's in a very, very different place in her life to Ryle. At 23, her brain hasn't finished developing. Meanwhile, he's a 30-year-old man. That's my age. Like, I was speaking to Elise about this and how at a glance it doesn't seem so awful because they're both legal adults. But then I was like, we're 30. Think about the last 23-year-old you met and think about the difference in maturity and where you're both at in life and circumstances and all this stuff. And God, 23-year-old seems so young. Like, can we not have 30-year-olds seducing barely adults, please? And can we not have adults seducing children? And I get what I'm saying sounds contradictory here because, like, on the one hand, I'm like, oh, 23 is so young, and on the other, I'm like, 18 is so old. But yeah, in these situations, they are. Even, like, 23 to 18 would be a big gap and, like, a little creepy, you know? At that age, like, there's some big, big differences. Like, with 18 and 15, Atlas is there talking about his career and this job he's gonna get and this and this. And Lily's like, cool, I've got 3 years of school left. Whereas, like, 23 and 30, Lily's like, oh, just finished college. Ooh, I've just got my first job. What am I gonna do with my life? Meanwhile, Ryle's like, oh, I'm gonna be the top neurosurgeon in the country. Do you see what I mean? So anyway, this bothers me, and I just want to know why Colleen Hoover can't just write a normal, non-predatory relationship. And sorry, there's a really annoying little fly in the house and it's bothering me. Yeah, why can't Colleen Hoover just write a normal, non-predatory relationship? Why did she have to make these age gaps like this? This is her book. She could have done any ages she wanted. She could have made them both 18. She could have made them both 15. But she chose to do this creepy 15 and 18 thing. She could have made Lily and Ryle both in their 30s. She could have made them both 23. But no, she did the 23 and 30 thing. Why does she keep doing this? This morning when I got to the bus stop, Atlas was already there. It was just the two of us at first, and I'm not gonna lie, it was awkward. I could see the bus coming around the corner, and I was wishing it would drive a little faster. Right when he pulled up, he took a step closer to me, and without looking up, he said thank you. Oh, because she took him round some food last night to his house, just like left it out there. His voice gave me chills, Ellen. Has a boy's voice ever done that to you? Oh wait, sorry. Has a girl's voice ever done that to you? His hair was dark brown, but I thought maybe if he washed it, it wouldn't be as dark as it looked right then. His eyes were bright, unlike the rest of him. Real blue eyes, the kind you see on a Siberian husky. I shouldn't compare his eyes to a dog, but that's the first thing I thought when I saw them. How does this writing get published? So she invites him to her house after school to have a shower and get cleaned up, and she gives him some of her dad's clothes, and he must have shaved while he was in there because he looked younger than he did before he got in the shower. I swallowed and looked back down at the backpack because I was shocked at how different he looked. I was scared he might see thoughts written across my face. Yeah, I'm sure he did look younger, but he's still too old for you because you're a child. He smiled. It was the first time he'd smiled at me, and I had an awful shallow thought in that moment. I wondered how someone with such a great smile could have such poopy parents. I immediately hated myself for thinking it, because of course parents should love their kids no matter how cute or ugly or skinny or fat or smart or stupid they are, but sometimes you can't control where your mind goes. You just have to train it not to go there anymore. Right before he walked out of the back door, he said, "Thank you for not being disparaging, Lily." And then he was gone. Of course, I've heard the term disparaging before. Oh, did you? Did your teacher say that to you because you're still a child in school? Sorry. But it was weird hearing a teenage guy use it. What's even weirder is how everything about Atlas seemed so contradictory. How does a guy who is obviously humble, well-mannered, and uses words like disparaging end up homeless? How does any teenager end up homeless? I need to find out, Ellen. I'm going to find out what happened to him. You just wait and see. Or you could stop being judgmental and prying into his private life. Just a thought. It's nice you want to help him, but he is allowed his privacy. You can help him without having to find out everything about his life story and his past and all these things that he might not actually want to talk to anyone about, you know? Back to the present day, and if Ryle Kincaid was here now, I'd tell him the naked truth that I was a little bit relieved when my father became too physically ill to hurt my mother. It completely changed the dynamic of their relationship, and I no longer felt obligated to stay in Plethora, Maine, to make sure she was okay. Okay, or you could just get a therapist and tell them and work through the trauma. Chapter 3, 6 months later. Lily's mum has randomly moved to the same city as her, and Lily has taken the plunge and bought herself a flower shop. Because yes, that is relatable. Every 23-year-old has resources to afford to buy their own flower shop in, I think this is Boston. She's just got the keys and the place is still a mess, and some random woman walks in off the street asking for a job. Her name is Alyssa. She's cute, she's dressed well, but she's wearing white capris. A disaster waiting to happen in this dust bowl. I'm not going to pretend I have a degree in design, but it's absolutely my favourite thing. If you need any help, I'd do it for free. I tilt my head. You'd work for free? Yeah. Totally relatable. Totally. What was Colleen Hoover smoking when she wrote this? Turns out that Alyssa's husband is a millionaire and she's just a good little housewife, so she'll do just about anything to have some fun. She nods. I don't really need a job. I just saw the sign and thought, what the heck? But I do get bored sometimes. I'd be happy to help you with whatever you need. Cleaning, decorating, picking out paint colours. I'm a Pinterest whore. Something behind me catches her eye and she points. I could take that broken door and make it magnificent. All this stuff, really. There's a use for almost everything, you know. Now, I don't know about you guys, but yeah, I would absolutely hire someone on the spot who has no qualifications, no work experience, but tells me, I am a Pinterest whore, teehee, you know, who just walked in off the street and offered to work for free. Absolutely. Why not? What could go wrong? Colleen has no idea how the real world works, does she? Lily's like, yeah, sure, I'll give you a job, but I'll pay you $10 an hour. Alyssa starts clapping, and if she weren't in heels, she might have jumped up and down. When can I start? Why is everyone in this book a child? This woman is like, screw my white trousers. I'm too rich to care about the environment, so if I get them dirty, I'll just throw them away. I'll start work immediately. Alyssa's like, what do you want from this place? What do you want to make it? You've got a flower shop. Do you have a vision? And Lily's like, Brave and bold, I say. I want this place to be different. I want to take risks. She narrows her eyes as she chews on the tip of the pen. But you're just selling flowers, she says. How can you be brave and bold with flowers? I look around the room and try to envision what I'm thinking. I'm not even sure what I'm thinking. I'm just getting itchy and restless, like I'm on the verge of a brilliant idea. What are some words that come to mind when you think of flowers, I ask her. She shrugs. I don't know. They're sweet, I guess. They're alive, so they make me think of life. They're alive, so they make me think of life. God's sake. And maybe the colour pink. And spring. Sweet, life, pink, spring, I repeat. And then, Alyssa, you're brilliant. I stand up and begin pacing the floor. We'll take everything everyone loves about flowers and we'll do the complete opposite. Because not only is Lily not like the other girls, but she is #not like the other florists. Okay, editing me here for a quick rant. I have a very similar background to Lily's character. She did business at uni, I did business management, she worked in marketing before starting her own business, I worked in marketing before YouTube. How does she buy a flower shop? How does she start her own business like this without any sort of business plan, without any sort of marketing plan? She's put all this money into it with no plan in the first place. It's irresponsible. It's bad business practice, it's stupid. No bank would have approved this. Like, I assume she got some sort of loan or whatever. Like, surely she didn't buy it outright. No one would support this business or give her money for this business or fund this business without a business plan in the first place. This is stupid. She's stupid. All of this is stupid, and I hate it. Oh my god, I joke. It's not the worst idea in the world. It's fine. It's not exactly revolutionary though. I mean, like, poison gardens have been a staple for ever. What if, instead of showcasing the sweet side of flowers, we showcase the villainous side? Instead of pink accents, we use darker colours, like a deep purple or even black. And instead of just spring and life, we celebrate winter and death. Oh god, it's so dramatic, isn't it? Instead of only putting out the usual pastel displays of flowers in boring crystal vases that make people think of life, we go edgy, brave and bold. We put out displays of darker flowers wrapped in things like leather or silver chains. And rather than put them in crystal vases, we stick them in black onyx or, I don't know, purple velvet vases lined with silver studs. The ideas are endless. Oh, okay, now I get why all the children on TikTok swooned over this book. Like, oh my god, like, think of the aesthetic, it's so quirky. I don't know, maybe I'm just too old and grumpy to get excited over a fictional flower shop, but whatever. So then they're clearing out the back room, and there's this whole thing with, like, crates, and then, like, Lily falls off the crates because she's just, like, such a quirky, clumsy girl. Oh. But for once, being the stereotypical clumsy girl actually moves the plot forward, so yay. Lily has really hurt her ankle, so Alyssa calls her husband, who is busy getting drunk, with her brother. So Alyssa's husband and brother are best friends. They are wearing onesies to get free beer, so we know that they're like so totally quirky and original and not like the other boys or something. They come running over to help, and what do you know? It turns out the brother/husband's best friend, so conveniently, it turns out that the brother/best friend is a doctor. How convenient. And more than that, it's Ryle Kincaid. Who'da thunk it? What a coinky-dink. Not like the plot called for this or anything. She fell off the chair and hurt her ankle, she says to the other guy. He steps around Marshall, and the first thing I notice are his arms. Holy poop, I know those arms. Those are the arms of a neurosurgeon. Are they? Are they really? I don't know about you, but I don't normally associate muscles on muscles on muscles with being a neurosurgeon, but what do I know? Alyssa is his sister? The sister that owns the entire top floor with the husband who works in pajamas and brings in 7 figures a year? As soon as my eyes lock with Ryle's, his whole face morphs into a smile. I haven't seen him in, God, how long ago was that? 6 months? I can't say I haven't thought about him during the past 6 months because I've thought about him quite a few times. But I never actually thought I'd see him again. It's obvious he remembers me. I can see it in his knowing smile. But like me, he's pretending this is the first time we've met. I'm not sure I'm in the mood to explain how we already know each other. Ryle touches my ankle and inspects it. Can you move it? They're left alone for a whole 3 minutes and he goes into total fuckboy mode. I hate how Colleen Hoover writes flirting. It makes my skin crawl. It all just feels so sleazy and creepy and gross and He stares at me appreciatively. You're even prettier in the daytime. Moments like these are why I absolutely hate having red hair and fair skin. The embarrassment doesn't only show in my cheeks, but my whole face, arms, and neck grow flushed too. I rest my head against the wall behind me and stare at him just like he's staring at me. You want to hear the naked truth? He nods. I've wanted to go back to your roof on more than one occasion since that night, but I was too scared you'd be there. You make me kind of nervous. His fingers pause their strokes against my foot. My turn? I nod. His eyes narrow as his head moves to the underneath of my foot. He slowly traces his fingers from the tops of my toes down to the heel. I still very much want to F you. Someone gasps and it isn't me. Alyssa's overheard and she's like, oh my god, this scandal! Oh my god, I can't believe he just said that. I'm so sorry, Lily. Oh my god, my brother. Oh, can you believe him? Like, he's not coming across as like a creepy pervert. This is just boys will be boys, I guess. I smile at her and wave it off. It's fine, Alyssa. Lots of people want to F me. I glance back at Ryle and he's still casually stroking my foot. At least your brother speaks his mind. Not a lot of people have the courage to say what they're actually thinking. No, I think what you mean is that it was okay he said this to you because you already had an established relationship and you were both flirting with each other, so this revelation on his part was consensual, you know? It's not a let him speak his mind thing, because let's be honest, if a random person on the street said that to you, you'd quite rightly be shouting sexual harassment. It's not the, oh my god, he's so honest that makes it okay, it's the consent factor. That's the difference. That's what you should be pointing out. He places his hands on the table next to me and leans in a little. I'm very attracted to you too. There's not much about you I don't like, but I kind of hope we're never around each other again, because I don't like how much I think about you. Which isn't all that much, but it's more... So rude. I don't like how much I think about you, which isn't that much, but it's more than I'd like. So if you still aren't going to agree to a one-night stand, then I think it's best if we do what we can to avoid each other, because it won't do either of us any favours. Or you could just be a mature adult and have an ounce of self-control. It's not hard. I hate this narrative that men are just so unable to control their sexual urges, that either they just must sleep with every woman they're attracted to, or they have to avoid them completely. There's no in-between with men like this, and it's ridiculous. This does a disservice to men, you know, having this kind of narrative. Chapter 4. Lily decides to dive back into her old journals, and in the past, Atlas takes some dirty old gardening tools from behind the abandoned house he's living in, gives them to Lily because he's been spying on her as she gardens. Then they have this conversation. How old are you, he asks. 15. The look in his eyes makes him seem a little bit sad about my age, but I don't know why. Because he's a creep and you're a child. That's why. You're in 10th grade? I nodded, but honestly couldn't think of anything to say to him. I haven't really had much interaction with a lot of guys, especially seniors. When I'm nervous, I kind of just clam up. See, not just an age difference, but a difference in maturity and experience. Maybe you have nothing to say to him because you have nothing in common because he's an adult and you're a child. I don't know, perhaps I'm too protective of kids, especially teenagers this age because of like my own experiences, but yeah, just stop it, Atlas. Step away from the naive child. It's not that hard. I don't get why this is such a problem. It's so easy. You just see a child and you don't sleep with them. Anyway, they decide to watch Ellen together after school, and Atlas doesn't really say much because, remember, all attractive men in Colleen Hoover books are quiet and stoic and mysterious. I did notice he laughed at all the right times. I think good comedic timing is one of the most important things about a person's personality. Every time he laughed at your jokes, it made me feel better about sneaking him into my house. Then there's more stuff about her dad being abusive, and while it's quite poorly written, it's very much the epitome of telling and not showing. The sentiment behind it all and the feelings which are told to us are pretty accurate and relatable, so I don't hate this bit so much. Dad got home late tonight, which means he went to the bar after work, which means he's probably going to instigate a fight with my mother, which means he'll probably do something stupid again. I swear sometimes I get so mad at her for staying with him. I know I'm only 15 and probably don't understand all the reasons she chooses to stay, but I refuse to let her use me as her excuse. I don't care if she's too poor to leave him and we'd have to move into some crappy apartment and eat ramen noodles until I graduate. That would be better than this. I can hear him yelling at her right now. Sometimes when he gets like this, I walk into the living room hoping it'll calm him down. He doesn't like to hit her when I'm in the room. Maybe I should go try that. So she ends up getting upset at her dad, understandable, and running off to see Atlas. All of that is fine and understandable and normal, but Colleen Hoover has to make it creepy as hell with this. We sat like that for a while until I saw my bedroom light turn on. "You should go," he whispers. We both see my mum standing in the bedroom looking for me. It wasn't until that moment I realised what a perfect view he has of my bedroom. As I walked back home, I tried to think about the entire time Atlas has been in that house. I tried to recall if I'd walked around after dark with the light on at night, because all I normally wear in my room at night is a t-shirt. Here's the crazy thing, Ellen. I was kind of hoping I had. Stop it. Stop wanting some pervy adult to perv on you while you're still a child. Chapter 5. Lily's ankle has healed in a week or so, so she heads back to her flower shop only to find that Alyssa has done all her work for her for pretty much minimum wage, because why not? What sort of Colleen Hoover book would it be if the main character actually had to do any real work? Not any Colleen Hoover book I've ever read. When she gets back home that night, she finds Ryle knocking at her front door because the plot demands it, and so it must happen. "Jesus Christ," he says, dropping his head against my doorframe. He's panting like he's been working out, and that's when I notice he doesn't look to be any more rested or clean than I am. He's got a couple of days worth of stubble on his face, something I've never seen on him before, and his hair isn't styled like it usually is. It's a little erratic, like the look in his eye. "Do you have any idea how many doors I've knocked on to find you?" 29. "Why did you knock on 29 doors?" I ask with a tilt of my head. "You never told me which apartment was yours," he says matter-of-factly. "You said you lived in this building, but I couldn't remember if you even said which floor. And for the record, I almost started with the 3rd floor. I would have been here an hour ago if I went with my gut instead." Gonna be honest, a little bit creepy just turning up at her house, you know? Knocking on all these doors to find her. He could have just asked his sister for her number or gone to the flower shop where he knows she'll be, but, you know, creeper's gonna creep, I guess. So he shows up and he gives the most fuckboy speech ever. "These next couple of months are the most important months in my entire career, and I have to be focused. I'm closing in on the end of my residency, and then I'll have to sit for my exams." He's pacing my living room, talking frantically with his hands. "But for the past week, I haven't been able to get you out of my head. I don't know why. At work, at home, all I can think about is how crazy it feels when I'm near you. And I just need you to make it stop, Lily." He stops pacing and faces me. "Please make it stop. Just once. That's all it'll take, I swear." My fingers are digging into the skin of my arms as I watch him. He's still panting a little, and his eyes are still frantic, but he's looking at me, pleadingly. No one could find this attractive or endearing, right? This is like Barney Stinson levels of a pickup line. This is like "I've been bitten by a venomous snake and need you to suck the venom out of my penis" levels of pickup.
"I've been bitten by a moon snake. You need to suck all the space poison out of my..."
Okay, buddy. If a man turned around to me and said, "Please let me have sex with you so I can get my dream job," I would literally laugh in his face before I met a man like that anywhere near me. It's selfish, it's tragic, it's manipulative. And it gets worse. He nods, then makes like he's walking towards the door to leave. But as soon as he reaches me, he spins towards me and slaps his palm against the door on either side of my head. Violent. I gasp at both his proximity and his persistence. "Please," he says. I shake my head even though my body is starting to trade sides and beg my mind to cave in. "I'm really good at it, Lily," he says with a grin. "You'll barely even have to do any work." Okay, dating advice with Rachel again. Any men watching this video, don't take notes. Don't say this. Don't do this. Do the exact opposite. I try not to laugh, but his determination is as endearing as it is annoying. "Good night, Ryle." No, it's not. His head drops between his shoulders and he shakes it back and forth. He pushes off the door and stands up straight. He half turns heading for the hallway, but suddenly drops to his knees in front of me. He wraps his arms around my waist. "Please, Lily," he says through self-deprecating laughter. "Please have sex with me." He looks up at me with puppy dog eyes and a pathetic, hopeful grin. "I want you so, so bad, and I swear, once you have sex with me, you'll never hear from me again. I promise." There's something about a neurosurgeon literally on his knees begging for sex that does me in. That's pretty pathetic. The only pathetic one here is him. He's pretty pathetic. "Get up," I say, pushing his arms away from me. "You're embarrassing yourself." He is embarrassing himself. I'm embarrassed for him. I'm embarrassed even reading this out loud. So after she says, "Get up," pushes him away, and "You're embarrassing yourself," He slowly stands up, dragging his hands up the door on either side of me until he has me caged in between his arms. Is that a yes? What part of a woman physically pushing you away, telling you to leave, and that you're embarrassing yourself could possibly mean, yes, I want to have sex with you? What world is he living in? What world is Colleen Hoover living in where this is okay? How did her readers read this and think, oh, what a romantic guy. Yeah, I like him. His chest is barely touching mine, and I hate how good it feels to be wanted this much. I should be turned off by it, but I can hardly breathe when I look at him, especially when he has this suggestive smile on his face. I don't feel sexy right now, Ryle. I've worked all day, I'm exhausted, I smell like sweat and probably taste like dust. If you give me a little while to shower first, I might feel sexy enough to have sex with you. He's nodding feverishly before I'm even finished speaking. Shower. Take all the time you need. I'll wait. I hate both of these characters and I don't want to read this book anymore. Do I, Kyra? No. So Lily goes to the bathroom for a shower, somehow spends a whole hour in there, and then is surprised when she comes out to find that after working a 48-hour shift, Ryle has fallen asleep in her bed. So she decides the cool thing to do would be to steal his phone and take a photo of herself for whatever reason, and then sleeps next to him. Wow, so much romance. The next morning he wakes up and tells her that he'll never see her again and leaves, and I wish that was the end of the book. Wouldn't that be a great ending? He just goes, and then we can, like, forget everything else. Oh, my life would be so much better if that was it. At this point in reading, I was so confused if Colleen Hoover wanted to see the red flags in him or not, because you can count so many, right? The violent behaviour, the pushing boundaries, the pleading for sex, the you won't even have to do anything, I'll do all the work, have sex with me once so I can get a job manipulation, the, like, I'll have sex and then never see you again thing, the caging her in, the slamming the door next to her head, all that stuff, like, and also the charm and the love bombing and all that sort of thing. I thought Hoover was maybe trying to show us how abusers can be charming and put on this act in the beginning, you know, where they seem all confident and caring about stuff and all that sort of thing. But then she also shows us him being this insecure child who begs for women to let him treat her like a sex doll, you know? He refuses to acknowledge that women have any real agency when it comes to sex. He completely disregards her needs and values. He's just thinking with his own penis. He's constantly pushing and overstepping her boundaries. So what's the charm with this man? What's the appeal? I don't see it. I don't get why Lily is so into him. I don't get why Colleen Hoover wants us to be so into him when he's like this. I also can't tell if she's making him behave this way as a red flag or just because she thinks that's what romance is. Because you'll notice all these red flags that show up in him show up in all her other romantic leads. We see them in Atlas in this book, and he's supposed to be the good guy. We see them in Jeremy and Verity. We see them in all her other male romantic leads. The same behaviours, whether they're labelled as abusers or not. They display abusive behaviour. It's a real problem with Colleen Hoover's writing. So, chapter 6, and 53 whole days have passed. I would much rather hear about what happened in those days than hear any more about Ryle, I'll be honest. The Ryle-free days seem to be the best part of this book, and we don't even get to see them. Seriously, I would rather read 100 pages about Lily watching paint dry in her new flower shop than have to hear 1 minute more of, but please have sex with me, I'm a neurosurgeon. Anyway, after the 53 days, Lily opens her new flower shop with Alyssa. And she says, I do panic because something just went wrong. Terribly wrong. My very first customer is none other than Ryle Kincaid. Of course it is. He buys some flowers and he puts the address for delivery as the flower shop. And Alyssa, his sister, is like, ugh, what an idiot. But Lily's like, wow, Ryle just bought me flowers. Not just any flower. He bought me a bouquet of lilies. It's not cliched at all, is it? And the card he wrote for us says, make it stop. Mate, can you just stop thinking with your penis for 1 second, please? It's not funny or charming or cute, it's just annoying at this stage. This is Lily's big day. She's opening her dream shop inexplicably at 23, and yet you decided to make her whole first customer big achievement thing all about his stupid penis, saying, please have sex with me, please, me. Then there's also mention somewhere of Alyssa having a party and blah blah blah. Chapter 7. Thank God that was a short chapter. Lily takes some ex-colleague friend of hers to Alyssa's party. His name is Devin, and the only things we learn about him are he still works in marketing and he's gay. And after this scene, we never hear from him ever again. At the party, Alyssa answers the door with a glass of champagne in one hand and a riding crop in the other, because she's just like a super silly, quirky millionaire. Ha 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 ha, how relatable. Alyssa's home is huge, not because she's rich, but because her husband is. I whisper, "You actually live here?" She giggles. I know, and to think, I didn't even have to marry him for money. Marshall had 7 books and drove a Ford Pinto when I fell in love with him. Giggle, giggle, giggle. Let me just giggle some more about hoarding wealth in my wealth-hoarding penthouse while people live in poverty and struggle to feed their kids, and I am here with my wealthy husband making sexist jokes about women being gold diggers. Ha 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 ha, how quirky and cute. I don't know, maybe it's just my personal taste, but I've never really enjoyed books where the setting is just rich people doing rich things. It's not for me. Ryle gets grumpy that Lily brought a date, but pretends not to be grumpy and then acts like a privileged douchebag, destroying the planet one wine glass at a time. He smirks and then downs the rest of his wine. He tosses the empty wine glass towards a trash can in the corner of the room. He makes the shot, but the glass shatters when it hits the bottom of the empty container. This man is all the red flags. His skin should be bright crimson red. He is displaying so many red flags. Lily also realizes the photo Ryle took of her that night that they met. He zoomed in and cropped it so it's a blurry nothing, but then he got it printed and hung it on his sister's wall. Again, this is weird, right? Lily gets mad about the way Ryle is treating her, understandably. It all hits me at once. The anger, the irritation, the half glass of champagne I had in the kitchen. I'm so mad I can't even think straight. If the guy wants to have sex with me so bad, he shouldn't have fallen asleep. If he doesn't want me to swoon, he shouldn't buy me flowers. He shouldn't hang cryptic pictures of me where he lives. Oh yeah, it's a weird thing, he lives with his sister, even though he's his nearest, I don't know. The whole living arrangement thing is very confusing in this book. They're all just a bunch of rich people doing rich people things. Ugh. But here's something I've learned about relationships after a lot of dating and heartbreak over the last 14 years, but also after a lot of love and happiness too. When it comes to dating someone, if it's not an enthusiastic yes, it's a no. You know? Don't waste your time on maybes and could-bes and, oh, I'm not sure, let me just try out some other people first. Find someone who's enthusiastic about you and who you're enthusiastic about. Makes everything else easier. Life's too short to waste on, ooh, does he want me, does he not, I can't tell. The minute this guy came out with, I don't do relationships, I never want a relationship, and that was directly in contrast with Lily's, I want a serious relationship right now, we all knew this wasn't going to work. This was never going to end well. And also my tummy keeps grumbling because I'm really hungry, so I'm sorry if the mic's picking that up at all. Sure, sometimes people change their mind about wanting a relationship or not for the right person. But that working out in a healthy way without any heartbreak or pain along the way is so rare. It's just not worth the risk. Lily escapes the roof with some air and some time alone, only to be followed by Ryle because of course he doesn't respect any of her boundaries. She finally tells him, "You don't get it, do you?" I say, softening my voice. I feel too defeated right now to keep yelling at him. I like you, Ryle. She's known him for like 5 whole minutes, but okay. I like you, Ryle, and knowing that you only want me for one night makes me really, really sad. And maybe if this were a few months ago, we could have had sex and it would have been fine. And you would have walked away and I could have easily moved on with my life. But it's not a few months ago. You waited too long. And too many pieces of me are invested in you now. So please, stop flirting with me. Stop hanging pictures of me in your apartment. And stop sending me flowers. Because when you do those things, it doesn't feel good, Ryle. It actually kinda hurts. After this, she walks away. She tries to go home, only for him to completely disregard her feelings and invade her personal space in a very physical way. This man is very physically controlling. He doesn't understand personal space at all. I turn around and Ryle is pushing through the crowd on the other side of the room. "Lily, wait!" he yells, trying to make his way over to me. My heart is erratic. He's walking quickly, stepping around people, growing more frustrated with every person in his way. He finally reaches a break in the crowd and makes eye contact with me again. He holds my gaze as he marches towards me. He doesn't slow down. Alyssa has to step out of his way as he walks straight up to me. At first, I think he might kiss me, or at least give me a rebuttal to everything I said to him upstairs, but instead he does something I'm not prepared for. He scoops me up in his arms. "Ryle," I yell, gripping him around the neck, afraid he might drop me. "Put me down." He has an arm wrapped under my legs and one under my back. "I need to borrow Lily for the night," he says to Devin. "That okay?" I look at Devin and shake my head wide-eyed. Devin just smirks and says, "Be my guest." What in the misogyny is this? asking another man for permission to physically kidnap a woman, to take her away against her will. She's saying no. She's saying put me down. She's asking her friend, hey, can you save me from this? And these two men are just like, ha ha ha, silly woman doesn't know what she wants. Let me physically remove her from safety. This book makes me angry. Ryle starts to turn and walk towards the living room. I look at Alyssa as I pass her. Her eyes are wide with confusion. I'm gonna kill your brother, I yell at her. Why is no one saving this woman from being kidnapped? Everyone in the entire room is staring now. I'm so embarrassed. And probably scared? I just press my face against Ryle's chest as he walks me down the hallway and into his bedroom. Once the door is shut behind us, he slowly lowers my feet back to the floor. I immediately start to yell at him and try to push him out of the way of the bedroom door, but he spins me and shoves me against the door, grabbing both my wrists. He presses them against the wall above my head and says, Lily, when a woman won't sleep with you and is upset by how you're treating her, you do not physically lift her up and carry her away from her friends into a private space so you can physically assault her and control her some more. These are the actions of a violent, dangerous man, not a romantic or whatever Colleen Hoover wants us to think. I'm sorry if I don't think phrases like yelling, pushing, and shoving connote peak romance. They kiss and it's supposedly really, really good, but she literally says, he begins to pull me away from the door when I'm hit with the realization that yes, his mouth is capable of a lot, but what his mouth has failed to do is respond to everything I told him upstairs. Yeah, exactly! He's not listening to a word you say. Men like this are dangerous. They only care about themselves. They never listen to you. Run away right now. She tells him to put her down and he ignores it. She tells him again and he ignores it. She tells him again before he actually does it. Because clear consent isn't a big deal to this guy. Clearly. Then, because he's not getting his own way, he resorts to love bombing. Of course, Colleen Hoover has to frame it as romance, but no, it's just not. I had that picture made the day after I took it, because you were the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, and I wanted to look at it every single day. No one in the history of my life has ever crawled into my skin and refused to leave like you did. Abusers always spout this stuff to get what they want from you. When they're not getting their own way, they resort to love bombing, to manipulate you into thinking they actually care about you when they don't. When I would catch my abuser cheating on me, it was always, but she means nothing to me compared to you. You're the most beautiful woman I've ever known. You're the smartest woman. You're the most talented woman. When I catch him looking at naked photos of his ex that he told me he deleted but he hadn't because he was storing them in secret and like hiding them away, he would tell me that like I shouldn't be jealous of it because you have such a better body. You're such a better photographer than her. You're smarter than her. You're more this than her. You're this. You have everything she doesn't. In which case, why are you still looking at naked photos of her? And the thing is, you'd get so blinded by these compliments that you don't realise how insincere and hyperbolic they are. And because he throws all these compliments at you and he's like this, and this, you forget about the original thing he did wrong. It's typical love bombing. And the other thing that my abuser did that you might have noticed there that Ryle doesn't do, this isn't displayed in the book, but my abuser did, and I think it's something to watch out for, is he created rivalries between me and his exes, me and the other women he was cheating with. It was always me versus them, and I didn't realise it at the time, but he'd feed into that, so I saw them as the enemy, when in reality, he was the one in the wrong. He was the one cheating. He was the one leading on multiple women. He was the one who, you know, was triangulating and had all these different people on the go, and he was playing us all off against each other, and he was telling me this bad story about her and her and her, and he was probably telling the others bad stories about me and all this sort of thing. He was playing us off against each other, so we wouldn't turn our anger rightfully on him. Classic manipulative abuser. I've been using words like love bombing though, and if you are new to the concept, love bombing is by definition a type of emotional abuse where someone uses grand gestures to manipulate another person. A love bomber may bomb you with gifts, compliments, and affections, but these actions are not done out of kindness. Instead, love bombing is used to make a friend, partner, or loved one dependent on them so they can control the relationship. Another source reads, the intention is to make their victim helpless, vulnerable, and indebted to them. One moment you feel like the most amazing person, the next you'll feel like the worst person in the world. The problem is that this loving facade is only a mask. And that is absolutely true. Then Ryle gives her all this crap about how, this is all new to me. I want to prove to you that I won you for so much more than one night. How do I prove myself to you, Lily? Tell me and I'll do it. Or you could just work on yourself and grow up a bit before you get into a relationship. Don't ask some woman to fix you and then later get mad when she can't. Sort yourself out first, mate. Simple as that. Her response is to be like, okay, don't have sex with me, to prove to her he's like serious or something. So she sets this boundary and Riley's like, okay, cool, I can follow that. But first just let me push it a little bit because he doesn't understand what boundaries are. He walks around me to his bedroom door and he locks it. He flips off the light, leaving only a lamp on, and then takes off his shirt as he walks towards me. He tosses his shirt on a chair and then slips off his shoes. We're going to sleep. I glance at his bed, then at him. Right now? He nods and walks over to me. In one swift movement, he lifts my dress up over my head until I'm standing in the middle of his bedroom floor in my bra and panties. I cover myself, but he doesn't even look twice. He pulls me towards the bed and lifts the covers for me to crawl in. So, you're ignoring the fact that she was trying to go home, you took her away from her friends, now you're locking her in a room without asking first, you're taking off her clothes without asking first, you're leaving her feeling embarrassed and just dictating what she does, down to where and when she goes to sleep. This is controlling, not romance. The next morning, Alyssa tries to warn Lily about Ryle, but Ryle catches them and gets mad and tries to guilt trip her. Well, as your brother, I would hope you had a little more faith in me than you do. That's what siblings do. All the red flags, right? And for what it's worth, yes, one of my abuser's exes tried to warn me about him and he got mad at us both for that. So, it was worse in this scene, but I'm seeing similarities. Sorry if any of this filming is seeming a little bit disjointed. This has taken me a very, very long time to film, and it's also getting late into the evening now because I've had builders above me all day making a lot of noise, so I haven't been able to film until now. So I have literally just taken a break to order myself some food as a treat. In this chapter, Lily goes back to reading her old journals, and there's some more stuff about gardening. And this is a really small point, but she says, my garden is small compared to most gardens, maybe 10 feet by 12 feet, but it's all my dad will let me use of the backyard. I'm sorry, but how is 10 by 12 feet small? And that's apparently only a fraction of their backyard. That's the only bit that she can use. So it's bigger than that. How rich are this family and the kids she grew up around if that's small? Like, I was thinking, like, am I just insane here? So I got my tape measure out to check. And 10 by 12 is huge. It's like about 3/4 of the size of my kitchen living room in my flat, which is most of my living space. What the hell? That is a huge garden. Sorry, anyway. My dad let me have a patch of garden when I was a kid that was like 1 by 1 meter. That's a small garden. Maybe this is my Englishness and our lack of land talking. Or maybe it's just my poor kid upbringing. But this feels insane and out of touch to me. Lily then talks about how she's not allowed to have friends over from school and how she doesn't really get to go to other people's houses, so that was relatable. There's this one bit that says, maybe my father doesn't want me staying over at friends' houses because I might witness how a good husband is supposed to treat his wife. He probably wants me to believe that the way he treats my mother is normal, which could have been written about my own dad, to be honest, so I found that was a good insight. Atlas and Lily bond over plant metaphors, and then they have a compost and manure fight because that's sexy, I guess. This scene actually features the line, when he was wiping that cow shit on me, it was probably the most turned on I have ever been. And if you guys were ever in any doubt about how much I care about you and the videos I make and how much work goes into this, please just remember how many times I have had to read that line out, now say it out loud, and we'll have to hear it again multiple times while editing. That's how much I care. Then there's a horrible scene in which Lily's dad chokes her mum. I've spoken about this before, but statistically, if a partner has strangled you in the past, your risk of being killed by them is 10 times higher. Killed by any means, not just strangling. But also, strangulation is one of the means of physical abuse which is most likely to kill you. An abuser resorting to choking is incredibly serious. I'm lucky that my abuser never strangled me, but that's not to say he hasn't strangled people before. His ex told me stories of him strangling her and choking her, and the ex before her as well. And the moment I learned that was one of the final straws for me in knowing that, like, I could never go back. A man who would do that to his partner is not a man worth wasting any time on. Men like Johnny Yates are dangerous. And this isn't a, oh, one-time mistake, oh, it's his crazy girlfriend making him do that, because men like the fictional characters in this book, men like Johnny Yates, are dangerous, violent men. It's not just one-off mistakes, it's repeated abuse and violence towards numerous women over a number of years. It's hard to say, but I don't doubt that at some point Johnny is going to end up killing one of his partners, and I had to make the decision for it not to be me. The thing is, when you leave a man like that, you get all this internal guilt because you're like, crap, he's done it to women before me, he did it to me, he's going to continue doing it to women after I leave. And you get this guilt because you're like, oh God, like, who am I putting in danger now? If he's not doing it to me, he's going to do it to someone else. And you get this incredible guilt and shame, and it's really hard to live with. Like, for me, I know he's going to do it to someone else. He's probably already done it to someone else, and there's nothing I can do to stop that. The only thing I can do is not sacrifice my own life to stop it, you know? And I think that's the same for everyone else in those situations. You can't sacrifice your own life. If a man is an abuser and he's going to keep abusing, the only thing you can do is make sure he doesn't do it to you. Like, I took the steps that I could. I involved the police. I spoke out about it. And that's all I really could do while keeping myself safe, you know? And now I'm trying my best to speak out about domestic violence and abuse wherever I can. And it's hard because, like, it's stuff that I'm still learning along the way, and it's hard to talk about, like, other people's situations because you don't really know what happened, and so you can, like, try and speak about it, but you don't always know, you don't always get things right, and it's hard. So all I can really do is talk about my own experience and hope it helps other people get out of dangerous situations if they're in them. Does that make sense? I'm not sure. Yeah. I guess the point of this is, if a man's displaying violent behaviour, especially one like strangulation, you need to get out of there, and you need to do it as soon as you can, as quickly and as safely as you can. And please don't feel any guilt about leaving, because you have to look after yourself, and it's all you can do. Of course you want to save other people, I do too, but you can't do that if you've sacrificed yourself in the process. You need to make sure you're safe first. Oh, okay, anyway, let's get back to the book. Lily jumps on her dad's back to stop him killing her mum, and yep, again, this was a little too real for me. It brought back a lot of memories of some difficult points in my life, so that was hard to read. I do think the bits with the parents are the best parts of this book, because even though they're poorly written, they're the most realistic and least problematic in terms of the stuff that Colleen Hoover's putting out there, so, you know, good on her for that. Lily and Atlas talk the next day, and he's all concerned and reveals that he too was abused in the past, presumably by his dad, but it turns out to be his stepdad, and that seems to be why he ran away, or at least that's what's implied. The next day, Lily realizes what state the house that Atlas is living in is in, and it's like, oh no, you should come sleep in my bedroom, Mr. Adult Man, even though I'm just a 15-year-old child. You can't stay in this poor, rundown house. Be in my bedroom. So he does. The adult man comes and sleeps in her bedroom, and they chat all night, and I have to ask, where the hell are the parents throughout all this? How? Like, okay, again, maybe this is my poor person upbringing talking, but I grew up in this tiny terrace house with paper-thin walls. There is no way anyone could have snuck anyone into that house, never mind stayed up all night talking, without anyone hearing anything. Where are the parents? How do they not hear this? Anyway, they chat, and it turns out it was Atlas's stepdad who was the bad guy, so that's another cliche we can check off the list. Lily then learns that not every kid is as well off as her family, and that yes, the government really does screw over poor people. What a shock! Guess at least she's learning though, so that's something. Then she writes, I'll never be able to respect rich people now, knowing they willingly choose to spend their money on materialistic things, rather than using it to help other people. Does Colleen Hoover not see the irony of writing that from 15-year-old Lily, while in present day 23-year-old Lily's only friends and boyfriend are millionaires? And then this made me laugh. No offense, Ellen, I know you're rich, but I guess I'm not referring to people like you. I've seen all the stuff you've done for others on your show, and all the charities you support. So I guess I aged poorly too. Let's take a pause for a quick summary of my thoughts so far. So we're about a third of the way through the book at this point, and let's just take stock for a second. The best part of this book so far are the scenes with Lily's parents. Colleen Hoover's tone of voice is perfect for a naive, scared, 15-year-old, immature little kid, right? The dad's behaviour is realistic and relatable, and I get it. I do wish it was all written a little bit better. I want to see Lily begin to kind of realise and understand why her mum might stay with him, instead of just straight up stating it and telling us. But other than that, I have few complaints with those scenes. They're not that bad. The Ellen letters are annoying and I don't see the point in them, but maybe I'm just not American enough to see the appeal. I hate all the character names. I feel like 15-year-old Lily weirdly has a bit more personality than 23-year-old Lily, but they're still both pretty blank canvases. And overall, kind of boring. Alyssa seems very blank as well. Her thing is, I'm rich and I'm here and I have a brother. So again, don't really see the appeal. Atlas also has very little personality other than being quiet and poor. Okay. Anything else? Ryle, I hate everything about so far. He is a walking red flag. And this is the bit I'm struggling because I thought the first part of the book would be Colleen Hoover trying to show us like how good a relationship can be before it turns abusive. It could be showing us like how charismatic and charming abusers can be. But instead, I don't see anything appealing about Ryle at all. So, very gorgeous girl. Come here, gorgeous. I just don't think this whole thing with Ryle is being handled appropriately, and at this point I do feel like it's bordering on romanticizing abuse and toxic relationships, especially when you take into account the age difference of the couples, you know? Very gorgeous. Do you want to go toilet? Yeah, should we go toilet? Come on then. Alright, I'm going to take my Kubi out. I will be back. Okie pokey, chapter 9. So, this chapter starts with Ryle texting Lily, but her phone is on silent, so she misses them. He sulks, and then turns up at her house unannounced and uninvited. I hate people like this. Again, a tip for any men watching this. Don't do this. Ryle makes himself at home, starts stripping off his clothes, kicking his shoes everywhere, invites himself into her bed to stay the night. At this point, they're doing some trial dating thing where they aren't together, but they aren't not. And yet Lily says, his eyes close, but I keep mine open and stare at him. He has a type of face that people shy away from because you could get lost in it. And to think, I get to look at this face all the time. I don't have to be modest and look away because he's mine. Is he, Lily? Is he really? Ryle starts to fall asleep and Lily decides to massage his hands and his back, so he kisses her. And then Lily decides she wants to have sex with him, so asks in the most Colleen Hoover way possible. I don't think Colleen Hoover knows how to write sex scenes any other way. I want to play a little game with you guys though. I have put together a list of lines that Colleen Hoover has written about sex. I want you to guess which one or ones are from It Ends With Us. Answers will be on the screen at the end. He doesn't fuck me, we make love. I'd let him fuck me. I would very much like for you to fuck me now. His smile disappeared and he started to fuck me. He grabs a fistful of my hair and pulls it while he fucks me harder. I keep my eyes closed and my body limp, allowing him to use me to fuck the drunkenness out of himself. He kisses me the same way he fucks me. I'll bend you over the couch right now and fuck you so hard. He's unapologetic in the way he fucks me. Ready for round 2? These are all how men respond to sex in Colleen Hoover books. Can you guess which one is Ryle? He groans. Jesus fucking Christ. He says, still tense. He groans, and it's so loud. He groans, burying his face in my hair. He groans, and then says fuck a second time. This feels good. Jesus, name. His body ripples with tremors. He groans. Before he walks out of my bathroom, I hear him whisper. He whispers, this is too good. Oh my god, they're all the same. Are you seeing a pattern and lack of vocabulary? Anyway, the ones from this particular sex scene were, I would like very much for you to fuck me now. He's unapologetic in the way he fucks me. And Jesus, Lily, his body ripples with tremors. He groans. Oh my god. When you see it all together like this, it really makes sense how she pumps out so many books, doesn't it? Because they're all the same. I don't think Colleen Hoover has had an original thought or written an original sentence in her life. And that sounds horrible to say, but the evidence is in front of you. Here are some horrific highlights from this sex scene for you to tolerate. Honestly, there are worse ones in the book. There's one with a stethoscope. I'm not even gonna try to read that one out because it's bad. It's really bad. I grab a fistful of his hair and whisper against his mouth. I think we've waited long enough. I would very much like for you to fuck me now. He practically growls with a renewed sense of energy and begins to pull my shirt off. It becomes an interlude of hands and moans and tongues and sweat. I feel like this is the first time I've ever been touched by a man. The few who came before him were all boys. Nervous hands and timid mouth, but Ryle is all confidence. The only time he's not giving my body his undivided attention is when he reaches to the floor and fishes a condom out of his wallet. And I will say this for Colleen Hoover. For all I dislike her as a person, as an author, as a storyteller, at least she includes condoms in sex scenes. This one time. But yeah, good on her for making safe sex as sexy as the rest of her sex scenes, you know? Which isn't very sexy at all, but at least she's trying. Afterwards, in one of the most cliched lines yet, Ryle tells her, "You warned me. You said one time with you wouldn't be enough. You said you were like a drug, but you failed to tell me you were the most addictive kind." Chapter 10. Hey, remember earlier when 15-year-old Lily said she hated rich people and I was all like, what about your rich friends? Well, don't worry, Colleen Hoover just has to remind us that they're hashtag not like the other rich people because they donate to charity on occasions. Wild. Then we get another scene of Colleen Hoover pushing her, oh my god, women like totally need to be mothers or they're totally broken agenda, which she very clearly has. It's offensive. Combine these scenes with the stuff in Verity and I hate this woman. I notice a smile completely leave Alyssa's eyes right before she turns and walks back to throw out the trash. When she comes back, I'm still watching her curiously. I say it again. Alyssa, why do you work here? She stops what she's doing and takes in a slow breath, like maybe she's contemplating being honest with me. Because, she says looking down at her feet, I can't get pregnant. We've been trying for 2 years, but nothing has worked. I was tired of sitting at home crying all the time, so I decided I should find something to keep my mind busy. Yes. Because we all know women can't possibly want jobs for themselves. They can't possibly want jobs because they enjoy them. They can't possibly want jobs because they want financial independence. It must be a distraction because they don't have kids yet or they can't have kids. Ooh, poor women must need kids. I hate this. Back to Ryle, and after having sex just once, he decides he wants to meet her mum, so he invites himself along to dinner with them. Great. Rushing a relationship like this is another sign of emotional abuse and narcissistic abuse, and it is related to love bombing. The abusive partner sets the pace of the relationship and often rushes into big things sooner than might be considered normal. This is again to make you feel indebted to them. Later, when they might do something harmful, they'll turn around and say like, but what's it matter? I committed to you, I met your mum, I gave up my freedom for you, I gave up sleeping with so-and-so for you, I met your mother for you. Can't you just allow me this one thing, like beating you round the head? But as well as that, it integrates them into every part of your life, so it's harder to leave. It's always on their terms, never yours. And sometimes it can be the first stages of isolating you from other people. They'll go and charm your family, your friends, and get them on side, so you'll have no one to talk to, no one to turn to when the abuse starts. And if you do ever try and leave them, they can poison the well first because they're so integrated in your family and the rest of your life. Ryle is clearly pulling out all the manipulation tactics and rushing this stage of the relationship to make Lily feel special and different and like she's so much better than the other girls. He didn't want a relationship with them, but he wants one with her because she's different. She's special. She's better. He didn't want to meet other girls' mums, but he wants to meet hers because she's different, special, better. But notice how it makes her unsure and nervous. He hasn't even properly committed to her at this point, so he's still in control, still has one foot out the door, still has an excuse to behave in inappropriate ways probably, but he's setting the pace and rushing into meeting her mother so he can be in control. He wants to meet my mother. We aren't even officially dating. I mean, I don't care if he meets my mother. She would love him. But he went from not wanting anything to do with relationships to possibly agreeing to test drive one to meeting the parents, all within 5 days. Good God, I really am a drug. So once again, she's kind of blaming herself for this. He's making her feel like it's her fault. If she wasn't so attractive to him, then he wouldn't be rushing things. If she wasn't this, then he wouldn't do this. If people, no, he needs to take some responsibility for his actions, but he's already making her feel like it's all her fault and like all the responsibility is on her. So they go to dinner, and her mum is understandably all concerned about how Ryle treats her after not knowing her very long, and they're not even properly dating and stuff and blah blah blah. And then Ryle heads to the bathroom, the waiter comes over, and Lily freezes up because, oh my god, he looks exactly like Atlas, the homeless kid from Lily's letters as a 15-year-old, right? So she's all shaken up. I swallow hard, shaking my head. Surely that wasn't really Atlas, but those eyes, his mouth. I know it's been years since I saw him, but I'll never forget what he looked like. It had to be him. I know it was. And I know he recognised me too, because the second our eyes met, it looked like he'd seen a ghost. So she runs to the bathroom, and he's standing at the end of the hallway like a ghost straight out of the past. My eyes travel to his feet to make sure he's not suspended in the air. He isn't, he's real. And he's standing right in front of me. These lines are so stupid. God's sake, Colleen Hoover. It's been 8 years since they've seen each other, and there's a lot of swearing because Colleen Hoover doesn't know how to write emotion any other way. It's very frustrating. Seriously, the amount of swearing Colleen Hoover has in her books is laughably bad. So blah blah blah, they've changed in 8 years, shock shock shock. Turns out he was in the military, now he's working in this restaurant, and she's like, you're a waiter, okay. And she's like, I own a flower shop, blah 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 blah. It's this one, and he's like, cool, I'll look you up sometime. Done. She goes back to Din Din's. Cool. At dinner, Ryle is, and I quote, very charming with my mother in all the right ways, like a typical narcissist. But remember, it's all fake surface level charm. They don't mean any of it. Remember that. Apparently, so little time has passed and everything's happened so quickly that Lily's shop hasn't even had its grand opening yet. So it's been like a week and he's already forced his way into meeting her mum. Lovely. After the mum leaves and Ryle leaves, Atlas is stalking Lily and watching her and waiting by her car. He asks about Ryle, he tells her he has a girlfriend of a year who's called Cassie, and Lily gets all jelly and she's like, me, Kissy, ee. Atlas then tells her that he wishes they could have met a year ago before she met Ryle for the first time, and he met Cassie. And at this point I was like, oh my god, poor Cassie. She's the victim in all this. She's like, poor girl, this man's awful. This Atlas man is awful and she deserves better. And I was like, in my notes, I was like, dump him now, Cassie, dump him now. Because if my partner was going around telling other women that he wished he'd met them before he met me so he'd be with them and not me, I would be upset and furious and absolutely not stay with him. So, why are all the men in this book trash? Lily cries, end of the chapter. Chapter 11. Lily goes home and is like, I'm not ready to read any more of these journals, and then proceeds to read more of her journals. Oh, Kyra's here to say hi to everyone, aren't you, baby? Yes, you are. You're gonna snort into the microphone for me like a grumble pig. Good girl. Thank you. So, this part of the old journal starts with some really cringy Finding Nemo references. Now, unpopular opinion, and I expect you all to unsubscribe for this, but I've never really understood the hype around Finding Nemo. I don't enjoy it. It's not my favourite. I think there are far better Disney Pixar films, like any of the first 3 Toy Story films. A Bug's Life, Ratatouille, WALL-E, Brave, Soul. Compared to them, Finding Nemo just does nothing for me, which seems insane as you all know how much I love sea life, but yeah, I don't get it. I'm sorry, this one's licking my arm like crazy, aren't you? Anyway, it turns out at this point that Atlas has been crawling through Lily's bedroom window and sleeping on her floor every night for like however many weeks. But now, shockingly, oh my god, he's ill, he's got a flu, what would we do? If only America had a decent healthcare system, this wouldn't be a scary plot point. There would be no drama with this in the UK. Some people criticise the NHS a lot, but let's be honest, it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. We are very, very lucky to have it. I recently had a bit of a health scare where I had a change on my body, and with my family's history of breast cancer on both my mum and dad's sides, I was very, very scared. So I contacted my doctor, got an appointment within the week, which was fantastic. She did a full exam and found some lumps and got me a hospital appointment 10 days later. At the hospital, all in the same day, I had exams, I had scans, they gave me my results on the day, and it turns out harmless cysts, nothing to worry about. But because of my family history, they've now referred me to another clinic so I can go and get some genetic testing to see how at risk I actually am. And after that, they're going to do regular breast exams and checkups to make sure if anything does go wrong, they can catch it really, really early, which is wonderful. So I went from like absolute fear and panic to find out there's absolutely nothing wrong with me within 3 weeks. All for free. Didn't cost me a penny because the NHS is fantastic. When I was worrying in between my appointments, I went online, I was looking at what other people had experienced and things like that, and I saw people stressing about symptoms exactly like mine, but not being able to afford to go and see a doctor about it, and having to save up, and when they finally went, it was too late, and all these other horror stories. And it was really, really like upsetting to read that other people have gone through that. I was taken seriously straight away. I was seen and examined and had all the tests I needed straight away. My mind was put at ease in 3 weeks, and now I have a long-term preventative care plan in place, all for free. The NHS is damn good, so let's just appreciate that, please, and not let the Tories take it away from us like they've taken away so many other great things. Anyway, my main points are 1, yay NHS, and 2, this plot point would not have unfolded like this in the UK. In the UK, a homeless 18-year-old with these symptoms could have just gone to a hospital and got treatment for free. So screw you, America. You suck sometimes. Anyway, back to Atlas. Let's find out what's actually wrong with him. His eyes were bloodshot, his skin was pale, and even though it was cold, his hair was sweaty. I didn't even ask if he was feeling okay. I already knew he wasn't. So Lily makes him take some cold and flu tablets because that's all she can do for him. He starts puking in her bin, he has a temperature, he pukes all night. The next morning, Lily lies to her parents and says she was the one puking all night so she can stay off school and look after him. Lily and Atlas stay home and watch Finding Nemo together, and Lily says, I know it was probably the worst day of his life, Ellen, but it was one of my favourites. I feel really bad about that. Yeah, you should. I've had to look after my partner when he's sick before. You know, hold his hair back while he's puking, clean him up afterwards. But the thought that crossed my mind when I was doing all that was never, oh, great, I'm so happy we're spending time together. It was, oh my god, I hope he's feeling okay. You know? Have some empathy, maybe. In her next letter, Lily writes about how she purposely washes his blankets that he normally sleeps on at night on her floor. She purposely washes them just before he needs them, so he's forced to sleep in the same bed at her, which is a pretty predatory move, isn't it? I'm not okay with that. That's not alright. And speaking of predatory, while we're on the subject, the 18-year-old man, now in bed with the 15-year-old child, decides now is a great time to ask her when she turns 16. Because that's not creepy at all, is it? I wondered why he was curious about my age, and it made me wonder what he thought about 15-year-olds. Did he look at me like I was just a little kid? He should. Like a little sister. I was almost 16, and 2.5 years apart in age isn't that bad. Maybe when two people are 15 and 18, it might seem like a little far apart, but once I turned 16, I bet no one would even think twice about a 2.5 year age difference. Oh, Lily. Lily. You know why he's asking. He wants to stick his penis in you and he wants it to be legal. He's grooming you, love. Trust me. And I'm sorry, but 16 and just about to turn 19 is still bad. Stop it. People will still bat an eye. He's grooming you. He's just waiting for it to be legal. Stop. Atlas then tells her that he's managed to get in touch with an uncle of his and he might have somewhere to live over in Boston. And Lily is sad because I guess she'd rather he was homeless and in danger and reliant on her than, you know, had a home. Why do all these characters suck? They're all bad people. A week passes and Lily writes, every day we get off the bus and Atlas takes a quick shower and then we make out. Every day. It's awesome. Yay for child predators. So awesome. Yay. This book sickens me. They start doing more sexual stuff together, which is creepy, and I am gonna say probably illegal, and it's not okay. Stop it. I hate it. I don't want to read about this stuff. Atlas is all, oh, I love to cook. I'm gonna bake you cookies in your parents' kitchen with your parents' ingredients. And Lily's like, what? Men know how to use ovens? What is this witchcraft? Oh my god. But Lily's dad comes home early and Atlas runs out of the kitchen, and then there's this moment that I think is really important, and I wish Hoover had explored it further. And again, I wish she'd shown us this stuff instead of just straight up telling us. But I think it's a really important point. My father sat down at the table and spent the next 10 minutes asking me questions about school and if I thought about going to college. Occasionally, when it was just the two of us, I saw glimpses of how a normal relationship with a father could be. Sitting at the kitchen table with him discussing colleges and career choices in high school. As much as I hated him most of the time, I still longed for more of these moments with him. If he could just always be the guy who was capable of being in these moments, things would be so much different for all of us. And this is so true. This is how it is for so many of us. Like, I wish we'd seen more of these moments. Like, you know, moments where he'd made her laugh or he was caring for her and the conflicting feelings that gives you. I wish we'd heard more of that in this book. I wish we'd seen her more, like, feeling conflicted instead of her dad being portrayed as this, like, one-dimensional villain, you know? For all the issues my family had, like, my dad and brother could be nice at times, and I do have some good memories with them. Like, I can't deny that, you know? You know, the same days my dad would throw plates of food at the wall and leave like 5 or 6-year-old me to clean it up. Could be the same days that, like, I'd wake up from bad dreams and he'd sit up with me in the middle of the night and we'd watch snooker together for hours, just me and him, until I could fall back asleep, you know? Or my brother, who was an adult and like 10 years older than me and a lot bigger than me. He could go from 1 minute like hitting me so hard it would leave these swollen handprints on my body, to the next like drawing me pictures that I put up on my wall. Or once, out of anger, he like smashed this special noddy plate that my grandma had given me before she died, and then he spent the rest of the weekend trying to make it up to me, like, you know, letting me pick the films and playing all my favourite music and that sort of thing. And it's conflicting because, like, he was trying to make it up to me and he was trying to be nice, but at the same time he'd taken something irreplaceable from me and it had broken my heart. So those are the memories that make it so conflicting and confusing, and they're why you do end up putting up with abuse from people for so long. Because for however many bad times there are, there's that one good time too that makes you think, well, they're just the price I have to pay for this. These good times are what make all that worth it. Or it's just normal. It's all that sort of thing. Like, they're the things that are so difficult to deal with, and they're what I wish Colleen Hoover had spent a little more time exploring. This one paragraph is fine, it's decent, but I want more. That's what I'm more interested in, you know? Okie pokey, I've gone and had a meal, and now I'm back. So, as Colleen Hoover can't possibly give us too much meaningful stuff at any one time, she then makes Lily go back upstairs where Atlas has snuck in through her window again, and he gives her this heart he's whittled for her from wood in her back garden, which, yeah, I'll admit is pretty cute. Like, that's really sweet. Like, that would be a really nice gift for someone to give someone they're into. Unless that someone is a child, and you're a fully grown adult. Stop it. The next scene is really horrific and difficult to read. Lily catches her dad attempting to violently rape her mum. I won't read it out because it's really rough, but I'm conflicted with the way Colleen Hoover writes these scenes, because on the one hand, it's good to show the realities of how bad things can get, but on the other, I'm like, are we sure this isn't just like torture porn? She writes these violent scenes in the same way she writes her sex scenes, and it's a little uncomfortable, and yeah. So Lily goes to the kitchen to get a knife to threaten her dad and get him to stop, but Atlas stops her. He carries her back upstairs. I don't know how I feel about this development either. Either way, the parents hear Lily's bedroom door but don't know she was downstairs and like saw what happened, so the dad stops before he actually rapes the mum, and then her mum comes up to her room and catches Lily and Atlas together, but instead of reacting to her teenage daughter having a grown man in her room, she just starts making excuses for her husband, which is scarily familiar, you know? It's not like that, Lily, we're married, and sometimes marriage is just, you're too young to understand it. Again, very, very familiar. There's a few more boring moments of Atlas being a child predator, and then Lily is like, I flipped to the next page, and then slammed the book shut. There's only one more entry, and I don't know that I really feel like reading it right now, or ever, because she's a dramatic teenager still at the age of 23. But at this point, like, Atlas has gone and moved to Boston with his uncle, and basically for the next, like, 6 months or however long it is, Lily doesn't write in her journal again until Atlas returns on the night of her 16th birthday, because of course he does. Anyway, we'll get to that later in the book. For now, chapter 12. So, the shop's been open for a handful of days, and now, today, it is finally the grand opening. And apparently it is a completely overwhelming success, because no one in Colleen Hoover's books can possibly fail at anything. Lily just can't cope with how many orders she's getting. There's orders here, and orders there, and orders, and meh. This is just one of those, like, awful cliches where everything the hero touches turns to gold. Lily Bloom can do no wrong, and it's unbearable and annoying, and I honestly find it a little bit boring. Ryle finally turns up after the shop has closed for the day, and Lily was upset that he wasn't there earlier, but at the same time she didn't communicate that she wanted him to be there, but also he probably should have been there because he is her partner and he's meant to care about her, but he really doesn't care, so he turned up at the end of the day, but it's not really the same, but meh. And this was a point where I realised just how boring of a character Ryle really is. Things we know about him are, he's a doctor, he has a lot of sex, he doesn't want marriage or kids, and in the last year, he's taken one single photo on his phone. What a well-rounded, interesting man. Oh no, there's more. Occasionally he beats up furniture. Just like, did Colleen Hoover not think this out a bit more? Does he have any hobbies? Does he have any friends? Does he have any opinions on anything? He's just boring and bland and very self-obsessed. Anyway, Alyssa's husband turns up too, and they all decide to wear onesies together and go to the pub for free beer. Because they're millionaires. That's what millionaires do, apparently. Of course, Lily uses this as an opportunity to remind us how much her and Alyssa are not at all like the other girls. Of course. Once we're all suited up, we lock the door and head to the bar. I've never in my life seen so many men in onesies. Alyssa and I are the only women wearing them, but I kind of like that. It's loud. So loud, and each time the Bruins make a good play, Alyssa and I have to cover our ears from the screams. At the pub, Alyssa decides to order water and her husband gets grumpy with her because how am I supposed to try and knock you up tonight if you aren't a little wasted? Nice. Again, can someone please teach Colleen Hoover what consent is, please? But Alyssa decides that now is the time to tell everyone, including her husband, for the first time ever, their surprise! She's pregnant!
Am I pregnant? Help?
A baba is growing in there. Finally, she's doing what Colleen Hoover thinks all women should do forever and ever and ever and something. There's some boring backstory, mostly about Alyssa and how she met her husband. Ryle's in the background, doesn't really do much. Alyssa and her husband met when they were 17 and 18. Turns out Ryle and Alyssa had this older brother who was a year older than them, who died when they were kids, and it's a sore topic for obvious reasons. Nothing more is said about it then, but it does become relevant later, so remember it, I guess. I wrote in my notes the first time I read this, I hope it doesn't end up being Ryle was so upset by his brother's death he turned abusive. That would be a bit cliched. Lily and Ryle head home. He calls himself her boyfriend, and Lily is like, oh my god, best day ever, because she's still a teenager. Oh, I know 23 is still young in the grand scheme of things, but she sounds younger than she should at this point. She still sounds like a 14-year-old girl. I think Colleen Hoover should stop trying to add 7 swear words to every page of her books. Stop writing the same terrible sex scene over and over and over and over. Learn what a toxic relationship is and stop writing them as romance. And maybe start writing teen fiction instead, because that's the only voice and level of emotional maturity that she knows how to write. So she'd be better for that audience, I think. So in this chapter, Lily and Ryle have sex in the flower shop. Ryle's mum calls him, and then they have sex again. That's it. End of chapter. Done. Nothing happens. Well, okay, slight something happens. Oh god, this is the chapter with the horrific stethoscope sex scene. Words I never thought I would say. Don't. I'm not going to talk about it. Don't bother reading it. It's weird, okay? It's just weird. But the thing I want to talk about in this is Ryle reveals that he's really, really super close to his mum. He's like, I talk to my mother almost daily now. But he also says, my mother's very overbearing, very judgmental, especially of the people she loves the most. Like, this could literally be describing the man who abused me. The whole being that close to his mum thing, but his mum being overbearing and stuff. Like, he was super, like, weirdly close with and protective of his mum. But the scary part is, like, his mum protected him, you know? Like, she'd get mad at him sometimes for things like taking their car and driving while on cocaine, but she'd still let him do it again and again and again and again. She knew he was an alcoholic, but she still bought him like 1 to 2 bottles of wine every day. She knew he hurt me, and there were literal nights when, like, I had to sleep locked in the same room as, like, her and his dad, so he couldn't get to me and hurt me. But she still kept making excuses for him and his behaviour and letting him get away with it. She still didn't get him any help or do anything. And it just kind of makes me wonder if there's some sort of pattern between abusive men and being kind of weirdly codependent with their mothers in that way. I don't know. It was just an interesting parallel between the fictional abuser and my real life abuser that I noticed and wanted to question, you know? Chapter 14 opens with Lily cooking dinner for Ryle while naked. Why not? He turns up at her flat and without even saying anything bites her on the bum. Why do I read this stuff? Why is my life? He then tells her, don't tempt the scorpion if you don't want to get stung, which is a surprisingly intelligent moment from Colleen Hoover, and I wonder if she realises the significance of what she says here. I hope so, because if so, this is showing intelligence in a way that I have never seen from her before, or heard from her before when she's been speaking. I didn't expect this from her. So, if you guys don't know the story of the scorpion and the frog, I think I last spoke about this in my video on Rupi Kaur's poetry, I want to say, so a while back now. But basically, it's this old, like, folktale kind of thing. Folktale, I guess. It's a story, basically, of a scorpion's trying to cross a river, and he asks a frog to give him a lift across. He's like, can you carry me across the river, please? I can't swim. And the frog's like, but you're a scorpion. What if you sting me? And the scorpion's like, mate, why would I do that? If we're halfway across the river and I sting you, then you die, I die. It wouldn't make sense for me to sting you. Trust me. So the frog's like, mate, you're right. All right, go on, get on my back. I'll swim across. So the scorpion gets on the frog's back, and the frog's having his little swim, and halfway across the river, the scorpion stings the frog. And as the frog is dying of this poison from the stinger, and the scorpion's about to drown, the frog says, "Mate, why'd you do that? You've doomed us both now." And the scorpion says, "I'm sorry, I couldn't resist. It's just in my nature." And it's this fable about how some people or creatures who are cruel or dangerous by nature can't help themselves but hurt others, even when it's at a detriment to themselves. And many people say abusers, especially narcissistic abusers, are like the scorpion in that story because they just can't help hurting the people around them. It's in their nature. They'll always do it, even when they know it's wrong, even when it's a detriment to themselves, and I can't help but agree with that. The only way to avoid getting hurt by these dangerous creatures is to avoid them altogether. Even when they give you their word they won't hurt you, they can't deny their nature, and they will. So Colleen Hoover is pretty smart to bring this up here because, you know, it's obviously showing us how Ryle is so dangerous by nature that no matter what he says, he's going to end up hurting the people around him. That's what he does. He's a scorpion. He can't help but sting. It's in his nature. But there's also this added layer of ego and manipulation because despite the reference and him being the dangerous one, he still manages to blame his victim for tempting her into hurting him. Read that again. Don't tempt the scorpion if you don't want to get stung. He's like, there's the recognition that it's in his nature to sting, that this is what he does, yet he still blames her for it. He still gaslights her into thinking it's her fault. That man. I'm shocked. I didn't know Colleen Hoover had it in her. This is very perceptive. Really good to include this. I love this part. Really good. At least I'm hoping it was intentional, because if not, I'm giving her a lot of credit for a lot of nothing. But yeah, I liked that bit. Not the bum biting bit, but the scorpion line. He then starts telling Lily about an operation he's going to do, and it's a typical narcissistic bragging, really. I wouldn't hate this so much in every character, but just like alongside everything else Ryle's done, it makes him completely unbearable. Like I say, it's another pointer towards being a narcissistic abuser. So Dr. Imani's book, Should I Stay or Should I Go? That book literally saved my life. It often talks about how these types of abusers have delusions of grandeur and inflated self-worth, and even when they do have genuine achievements, they can't help but profusely bragging about them and making sure everyone else knows about them too. They need to make sure everyone around them knows how great and smart and talented and blah 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 that they are. Ryle does this too many times, especially in this scene. He holds up his right hand and wiggles his fingers. "But this is a very special hand that has been through almost $500,000 worth of specialty education. I have a lot of faith in this hand. This hand," he whispers, "is the steadiest hand in all of Boston." And then they start to have sex again, because of course they do. And it's the same sex scene we've seen over and over and over, several times in this book already, and in all of Colleen Hoover's books. I didn't think it was possible to be bored of sex, yet Colleen Hoover manages to prove me wrong time and time again. Because they're busy having sex, they forget about the casserole cooking, and they rush into the kitchen, and because he's an idiot, Ryle is like, "Oh, get it out of the oven," and forgets to put oven gloves on and just grabs it with his bare hands and obviously burns his hands and drops his boiling hot casserole all over the floor. Lily tries to laugh it off, but Ryle gets angry and takes it out on her. He turns his anger at himself into physical violence against his partner, just like Johnny used to do. He'd mess something up and then take it out on me. This scene is so reminiscent of what I experienced over and over and over and over. He slams the oven shut and moves to the faucet, shoving his hand under the cold water, muttering curse words. I'm trying to suppress my laughter, but the wine and the ridiculousness of the last few seconds are making it hard. I'm instantly not laughing anymore. I'm on the floor, my hand pressed against the corner of my eye. In a matter of 1 second, Ryle's arm came out of nowhere and slammed against me, knocking me backwards. There was enough force behind it to knock me off balance. When I lost my footing, I hit my head on one of the cabinet door handles as I came down. Pain shoots through the corner of my eye right near my temple, and then I feel the weight. Heaviness follows it and presses down on every part of me. So much gravity pushing down my emotions. Everything shatters. "God damn it, Lily," I hear him say. "It's not funny. This hand is my effing career." And it's interesting because I spoke to Elise about this scene, and when she first read it, she just thought he was worried about his hands, he was trying to get them under the water, and he pushed her out of the way to on the way to the sink by accident, and that he didn't even mean to hurt her. It was just an accident, like rushing to get there. But when I read it, I was like, no, he got his hands under the water, and then he pushes her because he's angry and violent, and that's his reaction. And this is why I think it's so important to talk about these topics and help people recognize these early warning signs of abuse, because this is the first time he gets physically violent with her, but it's not the first incidence of abuse we've seen. But it is the first time he gets physically violent with her, and when you don't expect it, when you're not looking for it, when you don't know what to look for, it's easy to make excuses for people. Oh, it was a genuine accident. Oh, he didn't mean to. Oh, he was just rushing to maybe it was a one-off. All these things. I know because I've been there in my own life, because I've made all those excuses when it was happening to me. Of course, Ryle is immediately apologetic, just like Johnny used to be, just like my brother used to be. Actually, surprisingly, not like my dad used to be. I don't think he ever apologised for any of it. But, you know, my brother or Johnny, they'd smash my things one minute, push me around, all sorts, hit me, whatever, and then the next, like, you know, they'd calm down, the anger would dissipate, and all of a sudden it would be like, oh, I'm so sorry, can you forgive me? Please don't tell anyone. Same thing over and over again. It's like they have a script. You know, they all say the same thing. Then I feel him next to me, his goddamn hand on my back, rubbing. Lily, he says. Oh god, Lily. He tries to pull my arms from my head, but I refuse to budge. I start shaking my head, wanting the last 15 seconds to go away. He pulls me against him and starts kissing the top of my head. I'm so sorry. I just burned my hand. I panicked. You were laughing, and I'm so sorry. It all happened so fast. I didn't mean to push you, Lily. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Lily. It was an accident. I'm so sorry. Now, what's interesting is when this happens, Lily immediately draws parallels between her dad and Ryle, which I found very interesting because when I was going through abuse myself, I didn't draw those comparisons until much, much later. In my mind, they were different experiences, right? They couldn't possibly be similar, but no, they were. But Lily manages to be like, oh my god, he reminds me of my dad, he's just like my dad, it's like hearing my dad's voice again. So good on her for recognising that immediately. Ryle, it turns out, has cut his hand pretty bad, and despite what he just did to her, Lily is really just concerned with helping him and making sure his hand's better than so he can do his job and all this sort of thing. And yeah, this is a really realistic response. Abusers hurt you and then make themselves into the victim so you feel concerned for them. Ryle wraps his arms around my neck and desperately holds me against him. I'm so sorry, Lily. God, I'm so sorry. He borrows his face against my hair, squeezing me with every emotion inside of him. Please don't hate me, please. It really is like all abusers follow the same script. Ryle makes it up to her by having sex with her. I hate this. But again, realistic. Lily looks him in the eye. But Ryle, if anything like that ever happens again, I'll know that this time wasn't just an accident and I'll leave you without a second thought. Which I think is something all of us have said in that situation, but easier said than done, isn't it? Ryle then uses this as an opportunity to tell Lily that he's in love with her, which funnily enough is almost exactly how it happened with my abuser as well. We'd fought, he'd thrown stuff around, he'd pushed me away, I was gonna leave, he was storming around the house, blah blah, and then he used the whole like, oh I love you thing as a way to like control me and keep me around, you know? It was weeks after I said it to him and ended up in tears because he had got nasty about it. And then he finally said it back to me as a way to manipulate me. And these kinds of people, I don't believe they really know what love is. That might be controversial, but I don't think they know what love is. They don't know how to feel it. They don't know how to express it. They just use the idea of love as a way to control and manipulate us, and it's disgusting. And that's exactly what I see in Ryle here. He knows that that's what Lily wants from him. He knows that she wants to be loved. She knows that she wants a special kind of love. And when he's scared he might lose her and not be able to control her anymore, then he tells her that he loves her so he can keep her around longer. Chapter 15 starts with Ryle lying to his sister about Lily's injury. Of course he does. They all go back to the restaurant where Atlas works for dinner, and it's revealed that, drumroll, Atlas actually owns the restaurant. Oh my god, what the hell? He's not just a waiter, he's so successful and rich, woo, and whatever. Atlas locks eyes with me, and without thinking, I blurt out, "You're the chef?" The waiter leans around Atlas and says, "The chef, the owner, sometimes waiter, sometimes dishwasher." He gives a new meaning to hands-on. Because remember, everyone in this book is at the top of their respective fields under the age of 30. Of course, it's stupid. Would it have been so bad to have Atlas as this, like, waiter working his way up? You know, he's still, what, 26 or something? He doesn't have to have his whole life together. He doesn't have to own the best restaurant in Boston. Yeah, I know. Atlas notices Lily's face, and he's the only one who realises what's been going on, and he doesn't say anything. He just storms off and leaves her alone with the man that he thinks is abusing her. Great, wonderful, good job, Atlas. Totally see why everyone loves you. Lily runs off to the bathroom, and Atlas confronts her by following her in after unlocking her in the bathroom. Do you see what I mean about how the romantic good guys act in exactly the same way as the abusive bad guys? Why do all these men lock women in rooms? What happened, he asked. I shake my head. Nothing. His eyes are narrow, still ice blue, but somehow burning with fire. You're lying, Lily. I muster enough of a smile to get me by. It was an accident. Atlas laughs, and then his face falls flat. Leave him. Leave him? Jesus, he thinks this is something else entirely. I take a step forward and shake my head. He's not like that, Atlas. It wasn't like that. Ryle is a good person. He tilts his head and leans forward a little bit. Funny, you sound just like your mother. Again, this is one of the themes in the book about cycles of abuse and perpetuating abuse and all that sort of thing, and finally breaking the cycle and stuff like that. It's a very, very important theme. It's something which should be discussed. It's something that this book does slightly well in places every now and again, but I would like it to have been done a little more in depth and a little more subtly and with a little more care. What I'm getting from this book so far is that this is an incredibly important story with topics which should be discussed and told, and that it could be an amazing book, but that Colleen Hoover doesn't have the skill as a writer or the emotional maturity as an individual to pull it off in a respectful and effective manner. And that's very annoying. Atlas then decides to get her to leave her physically violent boyfriend by being physically violent himself. Yeah, makes sense. He's locked her in the bathroom at this point. He blocks the door to stop her leaving. He grabs her by the wrists and tries to get her to leave Ryle by, like, physically holding her, and it's not okay. Stop it. I know I brought this book all the time, but why do so many men in Colleen Hoover books have a thing about locking women in rooms? Jeremy did it with 2 different women in Verity, and now Ryle and Atlas both do it in this book. Like, is this a kink of Colleen Hoover's, like being locked in rooms by men? And if it is, I'm shaming it. Ryle catches Lily and Atlas locked together in the bathroom, and yeah, I can see why he'd be upset by that. Atlas threatens Ryle, and Ryle is like, wait, this is Atlas? The homeless boy you pity fucked. See, this is why the names are stupid. If he had a regular name like James, this wouldn't have happened. There's millions of Jameses in the world. He wouldn't have known which one it was. Stop being identifiable with your silly, silly names. Ryle and Atlas get into a fistfight, which is only slightly homoerotic. They're pushed apart against opposite walls, staring each other down, breathing heavily. Once they're kicked out of the restaurant, Ryle gets all angry and controlling and violent again. I follow Ryle outside and he's walking towards the parking lot. I run to catch him up and he stops and punches the air. I didn't bring my effing car, he yells, frustrated. I pull my keys out my purse and he walks up to me and snatches them from my hand. Yeah, just leave him at this point. Cut your losses, dump him. I get that it's hard though, and especially at this point, he's integrated himself completely into her life, you know? Her only employee is his sister. Her mum likes him, she literally has no other friends. What else is she supposed to do? Like, it feels scary, right? And this is why abusers try and isolate you. I've got you, baby, you're safe. Ryle then starts blaming Lily for everything. Like, I didn't want this, Lily, he says. I didn't want a relationship. I didn't want this stress in my life. Yeah, see, this is another reason why you shouldn't try and mold people to your needs and wants. Find someone who already matches yours. You can't force someone to be in a relationship with you if you don't want a relationship. But somehow they make up and it's all, I love you, no, I love you, blah, 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 blah. It's gross. Very, very gross, isn't it, Coops? In chapter 16, Atlas shows up at Lily's shop because, of course he does. He places a bag between us on the desk and pushes it towards me. A gift, he says. You can open it later. Why is he buying me gifts? He has a girlfriend. I have a boyfriend. Our past has already caused enough problems in my present. I certainly don't need gifts to exacerbate that. Why are you buying me gifts, Atlas? He leans back in his seat and crosses his arms over his chest. I bought it 3 years ago. I've been holding on to it in case I ever run into you. Yeah, again, if I was his girlfriend, I would be upset. I wouldn't want to date someone who's still pining over someone else and carrying gifts around for them for 3 years. Poor Cassie. Poor Cassie. Atlas tells her that he wants to apologise for saying that you sounded like your mother. That was hurtful and I'm sorry. But yeah, no, that wasn't something to apologise for, it was the truth. Maybe you could have said it in a better way, but really, come on. Atlas hides his phone number behind her phone case, like in the back of it, in case she ever needs it, so Ryle won't know it's there. That sort of thing does become pretty common when you're trying to escape the abuse, so I didn't hate this part. Turns out the gift he got her is a signed book by Ellen, so that's a thing, I guess. The thing is, like, he put this inscription in as well, and I thought, like, Ryle would end up being like, oh my god, where did you get this book? Where's the inscription? But no, the book doesn't end up actually being an issue. The book is just, like, forgotten about. So, okay. In chapter 17, Lily gets home and decides to read the end of her journal. The final last entry, oh my god, whatever. Apparently this entry was written 6 months after Atlas left for Boston, and 15-year-old Lily writes, I saw him again after he left. Several weeks later. It was my 16th birthday when he showed up. It became the absolute best day of my life. And then, the absolute worst. Of course he showed up on your 16th birthday because he's a groomer. He was grooming you and came back when it was legal. People say that teenagers don't know how to love like an adult. Unless you're a teenager loving an adult, right? Is that what you're gonna say? Yeah? I'm not an adult, and so I have nothing to compare it to. But I do believe it's probably different. I'm sure there's more substance in the love between two adults than there is between two teenagers. There's probably more maturity, more respect, more responsibility. But no matter how different the substance of a love might be at different ages in a person's life, I know that love still has to weigh the same. You feel that weight on your shoulders and in your stomach and on your heart no matter how old you are. And my feelings for Atlas are very heavy. Every night I cry myself to sleep and whisper, just keep swimming. You can't make this stuff up, can you? I know, Kubi, do you hate it too? Do you? Oh, baby bear. He said he wanted to tell me something and his voice grew serious. He readjusted me so that I was straddling his lap, groomer, because he wanted to look me in the eyes when he told me. He said the first night he went to that old house, he wasn't there because he needed a place to stay. He went there to kill himself. My hand went up to my mouth because I had no idea things had gotten so bad for him. He was sitting in the living room floor with a razor blade to his wrist. Right when he was about to use it, my bedroom light went on. You were standing there like an angel, backlit by the light of heaven, he said. I couldn't take my eyes off you. Stop it, Colleen. This is why Colleen Hoover shouldn't be allowed to write about serious topics. Also, knowing that her boyfriend nearly committed suicide really kind of puts 23-year-old Lily's suicide jokes in a new light, doesn't it? They're pretty awful. He watched me walk around my bedroom for a while, watched me lie on the bed and write in my journal. And he put down the razor blade because he said it had been a month since life had given him any sort of feeling at all. And looking at me gave him a little bit of feeling. Enough to not be numb enough to end things that night. You saved my life, Lily, he said to me, and you weren't even trying. Is this like emotional blackmail to get a child to have sex with you? Because it sounds like it to me. And then they have sex, because Colleen Hoover can't write an emotional moment without it ending in sex. Atlas also gives her a Boston fridge magnet, which we know from earlier in the book she still has on her fridge. And at this point I wrote in my notes, what you betting Ryle smashes it later? I know what's coming. I got this. And then, just in case you felt like there weren't enough cliches, Lily's dad breaks the door in with a baseball bat and beats up Atlas for being in bed with his daughter. I wish I was joking. So you're telling me they spent months sharing a room together, not having sex, but then the night that they finally have sex is when the parents decide to listen in and do something. There's police, there's blood, there's ambulances, all the drama, I guess. It's a scene. It happens. And then Lily doesn't see Atlas again until she walks into his restaurant 8 years later. So he literally did just like groom a child, wait till she was legal, sleep with her, and never see her again. He has excuses for it later, of course, but let's be honest, he's a groomer. Chapter 18, and we finally hit part 2 of the book. We are 50% of the way through the book, and this book is dragging so much. It's apparently only 386 pages long, but it feels so much longer. I don't know how long I've been filming for, but I'm exhausted. This took me like 10 days to write the script, so thanks for joining me on this journey. Chapter 18 opens with Lily about to meet Ryle's mum and dad. Lily immediately likes them. She says, just like that, every single fear I had vanished. They're perfect. They're normal. They say whore and laugh at Marshall's jokes. I couldn't ask for anything better. You have low standards, Lily. You should consider raising them. Later, after skipping all the action, Colleen pivots to a scene in which Lily and Alyssa are alone and talking babies, and I hate this entire conversation with a passion. I can't wait for you and Ryle to have a baby, she says. I don't know if he wants any. We've never really talked about it. It doesn't matter if he wants any, she says. He will. He didn't want a relationship before you. He didn't want to get married before you. And I feel a proposal coming on any month now. I prop my hand up on my head and face her. We've barely been together 6 months. What about you, Alyssa presses? Would you say yes if he proposed? I laugh. Are you kidding me? Of course, I'd marry him tonight. And in cliched fashion, Ryle, of course, is standing in the doorway listening to the whole conversation. Because of course he is. Lily, he says with stoic composure. I would marry the hell out of you. And they say romance is dead. Come on, people. But how many times do you have to say, I am fed up with this whole, like, narrative that Everyone wants marriage and kids if you just find the right person. Once you find the right person, of course you'll want them. Oh, what do you mean he hasn't wanted them up until now? Just because he hadn't met you yet. It's offensive to all of us child-free people who don't actually want to get married or do any of that traditional stuff, and it just really, really bothers me. If I had a physical copy of this book, I would burn it. I hate it that much. Ryle then suggests they go to Vegas and get married, and oh my god, true love, wow, romance, oh my god. Like, you have him rushing these relationship milestones again, pushing these boundaries and blah blah blah. Yeah, anything to trap her and make her reliant on him, you know? Stop it. I'm sorry, but if you're actually considering marrying someone without ever having discussed things like kids or where you'll live or finances or anything like that, then you're an idiot. And I'm not sorry for saying that. These two are idiots. Chapter 19, and in typical Colleen Hoover style, she skips the action again. So we didn't get to see any of the main interactions between Lily and Ryle's parents. We got like 3 sentences and then it skipped. Now, we're told there was a wedding, but we never saw any of it. We don't know what the wedding was like. We're not told about it. Now, 6 weeks after the wedding. This is the laziest writing ever. She's like, I'll tell you things have happened. I'll tell you things will happen, but I refuse to show you them happening because that would require work. And we all know Colleen Hoover doesn't like that. Either she is an evil genius or one of the laziest writers I have ever had the displeasure of reading, or a combination of both. I haven't decided yet. Lily's mum does the predictable vomit-inducing, as long as you give me grandchildren someday, thing to her, and that makes me hate her character now. It turns out that Lily and Ryle did finally talk about some important things on the way to their wedding. Again, pro tip, don't do this. Ryle and I talked about kids on the flight to Vegas. I wanted to make sure that the possibility was open for discussion in our future before I made a commitment to spend the rest of my life with him. He said it was definitely open for discussion. Then we so non-committal, it's open for discussion. Then we cleared the air about a lot of other things that might cause problems down the road. I told him I wanted separate checking accounts, but since he makes more money than me, he has to buy me a lot of presents all the time to keep me happy. He agreed. He made me promise I'd never become vegan. That was a simple promise. I love cheese too much. Well then, all the problems solved, I guess. And what's married life like, you don't ask? Well, it's okay. Colleen Hoover gives us an answer anyway. We both work almost every day. He works twice as many hours as I do, and he only gets home before I'm in bed 2 or 3 nights a week. But the nights we do get to spend together, I tend to want him to spend those nights buried deep inside me. Well, I want to go back in time and never have read that last sentence, but we don't always get what we want, do we, Lily? Life is absolutely perfect and wonderful and glorious and apparently. So Lily goes to shower only for it to be interrupted. I grab my razor and press it under my arm when I hear I'm sorry, why do we get details of her shaving, limb by limb, but we don't get details of her wedding? Not angry. I'm calm. I grab my razor and press it under my arm when I hear a crash. I pause. Ryle? Nothing. I finish shaving, then wash the soap off. Another crash. What in the world is he doing? I turn off the water and grab a towel, running it over myself. Ryle, the nightstand by our bed is tipped over. I move to the living room and see him sitting on the edge of the couch, his head in one of his hands. He's looking down at something in his other hand. What are you doing? He looks up at me and I don't recognize his expression. Are you forgetting that the first night you met him, he also smashed up furniture? This is what he does when he's angry. A man who reacts to emotions in this way is usually dangerous. The very first moment you met him should have been a big red flag. It should have been a big enough red flag for you to run. But here we are, it's happening again, and he's trapped you now so we can go full mask off. Turns out it's all because he found Atlas's phone number hidden inside Lily's phone case. And I get it, you know, I also would be upset if I found out my partner had been hiding contact with their ex. But this wouldn't be my reaction, you know? Her immediate thoughts are, he's gonna leave me or he's going to hurt me. Again, if these are the first responses to your partner being upset, it's not a sign of a healthy relationship. They both get physical with each other and he ends up pushing her down the stairs. Of course, he gaslights her into thinking she just fell, like the silly, silly little woman she is. And then he tells her that she's a liar for having Atlas's phone number and leaves her after throwing her down the stairs. Now, don't get me wrong, they're both doing awful things here, but just in different ways. I can't sit here and pretend that Lily hasn't done anything wrong. A few chapters ago, she admitted to still having feelings for Atlas, for still being in love with Atlas. She's been sneaking around and lying and seeing him and accepting gifts from him behind Ryle's back. She's kept his phone number a secret from Ryle. If I was in Ryle's position, I would be furious too. So she's not some perfectly innocent, never done anything wrong victim. However, she is still a victim because no matter what she does wrong, she doesn't deserve this violence against her. No one does. If the genders were swapped, it would be exactly the same. No one deserves to be treated like this with this level of violence. Ryle's behaviour is completely unacceptable and inexcusable. I want to make that clear. This is a toxic, abusive relationship that they both need to get out of. Lily, don't marry someone when you're in love with someone else. And Ryle, don't be an abusive piece of crap. You know your whole no dating thing? Go back to that. Of course, Ryle comes grovelling back afterwards, after a while, after he's cooled down, whatever, and he has all these empty apologies. He's like, I'm so sorry, it'll never happen again. But thankfully, Lily does the smart thing and kicks him out of her flat. Finally, thank God. So he goes back to have to stay with his sister. They divorce, they never see each other again. They all live happily ever after. The end. At least that's how I wish it ended. Turns out we still have like 15 chapters to go. She does kick him out, but sadly, it's only the chapter that ends. Turns out that in his anger, Ryle completely smashed Lily's phone, which sounds familiar. Sounds like Johnny again. This one time, he threw his phone at me, and he threw it at my head, so I ducked, and it hit the wall behind me, and then he told me it was my fault that it smashed, because I had the audacity to duck from it, and I should have just let it hit me. So now I owed him a new phone, and when I told him no, he started swerving into oncoming traffic. It was horrible. Why are abusers like this? Why do they do this? By the time Lily gets to work, Ryle has already poisoned the well. He's already got to Alyssa first. He's already told his side of the story. Again, common abusers' tactic. They spread fictitious stories about you before you can tell anyone the truth about them. They want you to seem like the bad guy. Again, this was Johnny's go-to tactic all the time. When we first got together, he told me all these stories of his crazy exes. You know, Sona was a crazy abuser who dislocated his shoulder and did all this horrible stuff. Meg was a drug addict. Claire was clingy and obsessed. None of that was true. I've spoken in depth to Claire. I've spoken to Meg. None of it was true. Sona I haven't spoken to, but I did get the full story from Claire that she only dislocated his shoulder because he trapped her in a room and she was trying to escape and he slipped trying to stop her from leaving. Now I'm sure he's probably got his own version of the story that he tells to whoever his new victims are about me. I'm crazy, I'm this, I'm what. Like he'll have some story made up to tell people about me, just like he has stories about the others. When I just left him, he tried to like turn basically my oldest friend against me, but because she knows me so well, no, of course that's not gonna work. It wouldn't work for him. But like you guys might know, I've had an issue with self-harm since my teens, and it turns out that while I was having some bad episodes, he secretly took photos of fresh cuts on my arm, still bleeding, and he went through like my bins and found like tissues and bandages and stuff that I'd cleaned up with, and he took photos of all of them and he started sending them around to Gabby and other people, telling everyone that I was insane and I was mentally ill and look what she does to herself, you can't trust anything she says. It was sick. It was really, really sick. And this is what abusers do. This is what I reckon Ryle will have done here. Lily's kicked him out, he doesn't know what to do, he's having to go back to his sisters, so now he's going to get the story out there first, like, oh well, it wasn't like she says, I was only doing this or this or this, abusers do this. They need to get their version out there first so they can seem like the victims. So when Lily gets to work, Alyssa is all sad and concerned for Ryle. Oh, and then a little bit for Lily too, but only after she sees her face. I hate this whole scene. You'll see why it angers me. Tell her, Alyssa says to her brother, her voice angrier now. She has a right to know, Ryle. She's your wife. If you don't tell her, I will. Alyssa spins towards me and puts her hands on my shoulder. Hear him out, she begs. I'm not asking you to forgive him because I have no idea what happened last night, but just please, as my sister-in-law and my best friend, give my brother a chance to talk to you. It doesn't matter what he has to say. There are no excuses that make this behaviour okay. It's not excusable. Anyway, Ryle reveals his big secret to Alyssa. Not to Alyssa, to Lily. Ryle reveals his big secret to Lily, and it turns out that he killed his brother! This doesn't make me have more sympathy for him, I'll be honest. I shot him, Lily. My best friend, my big brother. I was only 6 years old. The brother was 7. I didn't even know I was holding a real gun. I'm still so angry at him. I also still love him, and it absolutely kills me to find this out about him. After everything he's just said, her reaction is, oh, poor him, I need to make him feel better. And that annoys me so much. He goes on, I would never tell you this because I wanted to excuse my behaviour. He pulls back and looks me firmly in the eyes. You have to believe that. Since that happened, there are things I can't control. I get angry. I black out. I've been in therapy since I was 6 years old, but it's not my excuse. It is my reality. Oh, then I guess it's okay. You can't help being an abusive piece of crap. It's your reality. He can't help beating his wife. It's in his nature. Better get over it, bitch. Oh, I hate this so much. I hate it. Even if this wasn't an absolute cop-out in terms of a plot device, it still doesn't excuse what he did. She still needs to leave him, and it adds another layer of betrayal now because he knew about this before they got married and he said nothing. So did Alyssa. They knew he had blackouts where he got violent and didn't remember what he did. He couldn't control his behaviour. Do you not think she should have been warned of that before she married the man? They hid this from her. Dump the man now. Leave him immediately. He is trash. Go. You know, a few people don't like me on YouTube because apparently I don't have enough sympathy for abusers. Apparently I'm stigmatizing abusers in my content. And I don't know, maybe I am. But if so, they deserve it. Like, when you've lived through what I have and you've seen other women go through it as often as I have, all the excuses and the explanations and oh, they can't help it, it's a personality disorder, it's a blackout, it's a mental health thing, like, whatever excuse you want to use doesn't matter to me. It's not enough. I'll never forgive the behaviour, I'll never excuse it, I'll never understand it, I'll never be okay with it. I've been through crap myself, I've had mental health struggles myself, and yeah, I've turned that pain on myself more times than I can count. I've hurt myself plenty, but I've never turned that on other people the way abusers do. I've never spent my days manipulating and lying and plotting or any of that crap. I never spent like my days beating people up and locking them in rooms and any of it. So many of us go through trauma and we don't turn into that. So I won't apologise for not having enough sympathy for abusers. I won't apologise for not being a pro-abusers channel. And for the people who do leave comments like that and tell me I'm stigmatising abusers and like, I will just block them on the advice of my therapist, because people like that just want to basically re-traumatise me all over again, according to my therapist, Susan, and I have no patience for it anymore. I don't listen to that anymore. Stronger now. I got this. So yeah, I'm very angry at Colleen Hoover for including this entire plot point. Blackout. Seriously. Is she really trying to tell us that it's not really the abuser's fault? He's traumatised. He doesn't know what he's doing. Does she really want us to sympathise with the abuser? This may be one of the most dangerous, horrific, harmful parts of this book, and it makes me furious. Ryle says, when you ran after me last night, I swear I had no intention of hurting you. I was upset and angry, and sometimes when I feel that much emotion, something inside me just snaps. I don't remember the moment I pushed you, but I know I did. I did! All I was thinking when you were running after me was how I needed to get away from you. I wanted you out of my way. I didn't process that there were stairs around us. I didn't process my strength compared to yours. I effed up, Lily. I effed up. Yes, you did, and now you don't deserve a forgiveness. Break up. Lily's response, bless her, is exactly what all this love bombing and manipulation has trained it to be. Trained her to be. Trained this response from her. You know what I'm trying to say. It breaks me. It rips me apart from the inside out. All my heart wants to do is wrap tightly around his. Still, I'm trying to justify what happened. It was an accident. He thought I was cheating on him. He was hurt and angry and I got in his way. I bring my hands to my face and I sob because I feel more pain for that man out there knowing what he went through as a child than I feel for myself. And this is what abusers, especially narcissistic abusers, do. They turn themselves into the victims and it's sickening. They don't deserve any of this. He abused her, he hurt her, and she's the one feeling sorry for him, being like, that poor man. What he's going through is so much worse than anything he did to me. No, it's not. Lily starts telling herself that this is different to her dad. Different, it's not the same. I have to stop comparing us to them. We're our own individuals in an entirely different situation. My father never had an excuse for his anger, nor was he immediately apologetic. The way he treated my mother was so much worse than what's happened between Ryle and me. But earlier she was hearing the voice of her dad apologising to her mum, so that's a bunch of crap. Colleen Hoover really doesn't plan out these stories ahead of time, does she? She just makes it up as she goes along. But no, it wasn't worse. We're just seeing the abuse at different stages of the relationship, you know? What her dad was doing to her mum was after like 20 years of abuse. This is still the first year of abuse. It always escalates with these men. It always does. I can guarantee that the dad had his own excuses that he made with the mum. I can guarantee it. All these men do. It's not my fault because I'm an alcoholic, because I blacked out, because my dad hit me once, because I'm unemployed, and you know how that makes me feel. It's all absolute crap. These men are absolute trash no matter what their excuses are. Still, I want to make it very clear, I'm not blaming Lily's character at all for falling for this stuff. We all do. So many of us. I fell for it for long enough. My mum still falls for it to this day. Millions of women do, because this is what they've trained us to do, and it's sickening, but it's never, ever the victim's fault. It's not. Lily says, "Remember what you said to me on the roof that night? You said there's no such thing as bad people. We're all just people who sometimes do bad things." He nods and squeezes my hand. "You aren't a bad person, Ryle. I know that. You can still protect me. When you're upset, just walk away, and I'll walk away. We'll leave the situation until you're calm enough to talk about it, okay? You're not a monster, Ryle. You're only human." See, he was manipulating her from the moment they met. And all this stuff about, we can work through this, we can put the work in, we'll put coping strategies in place. They don't work. I've tried it. I've tried it all. It doesn't work with people like this. But Lily is saying all the same things that I said to Johnny, trying all the same things I said and tried. And I'm sure the same things that so many of you have said and tried as well. And the same things that women will continue to keep saying. And it breaks my heart. But sometimes you have to realise that men like this aren't going to change. A lot of them don't want to change. They won't put the effort. Writing the script made me so angry. I think I'm still a bit angry while I'm filming. That's probably coming across. I'm not the happy me I normally am. This book just makes me furious. I have ranted so much to my partner during making this video. Bless him. He's listened so much. Elise has let me rant a lot. He even ranted on her podcast the other day, so that episode will probably be out soon. Ah, bless them both for being wonderful, but I have eaten so many Maltesers to get through this book. Now what's keeping me calm? We're nearly there. Chapter 21. Let's do this. Whew. Okay, another time jump, and Alyssa is further along in her pregnancy, so she can't work as much anymore, and Lily now has 2 new employees, Serena and her ex-housemate Lucy. Lily is also still making excuses for Ryle, and it's frustrating, but it's realistic. She says to herself, "I am a strong woman. I've been around abusive situations my whole life. I will never become my mother. I can believe that 100%, which is exactly what I used to say to myself too. We do believe it, but it's kind of, it's hard to put that into practice, you know? It took a lot of therapy for me to realise that I was becoming exactly like my mum, and I needed to work to undo that as soon as possible so I could actually begin to heal and get myself in a safe space again, you know? Lily also mentions that she got in another fight last week with Ryle, and again, Colleen Hoover, why do you always make the action happen off page? Why? But apparently this one was over Ryle's future career and where they'll live, and there were some disagreements. And again, I'm like, why didn't you talk about this before you got married, you idiots? He said he never intended to stay in Boston forever. I told him that would have been a very good subject to bring up when we discussed our futures on the flight to get married in Vegas. Exactly. But apparently the fight was a success because he only smashed 1 vase before he took a break to cool off. Isn't it interesting how when he's trying to keep her around and keep her on his good side for a while, he can control these blackouts he has? Ryle then decides to stay in Boston, and to celebrate decides to buy them both an apartment without telling her. I hate this. This sort of thing would make me furious. It's controlling and manipulative, and you can't just decide where your partner lives and when they live and all this. Ugh. It's also another abuse tactic because he now controls the mortgage payments. Lily has to give up her own home. She has nowhere else to live. She's completely at the mercy of Ryle, and he'll decide how long she has a home. It's not okay. It's financial abuse, you know? You take away all these things that make a person independent and you make them reliant on you. In this case, she doesn't have her own home anymore. He has a home with his name on the lease and his name on the mortgage, and she has to move into it because he says so. But where does she go now? You know, if she needs to get away, where does she go? And he decided all this without asking her and without telling her until it was already done and too late. In chapter 22, Alyssa goes into labour and Lily wins some new business award that we've never heard of before, because of course she does. She has to be the best at everything, doesn't she, because she's a Colleen Hoover character. Alyssa has a baby girl and names it Riley, like Ryle, but with an extra E. I hate this book. Of course, not only is Alyssa a perfect woman because she's finally had the baby that all women need to have, but she also had an absolutely unreal labour. Marshall sits down on the bed next to Alyssa. Did you guys hear how quiet Izza was through the whole thing? Not a single peep. She didn't even take drugs. I have no words. But thankfully that's the end of the chapter. Let's move on to chapter 23. Chapter 23, and this is where things get dark. Lily comes home and finds Ryle drinking scotch, so clearly he's kind of drunk. He's playing with the Boston magnet that Atlas gave her on her 16th birthday. He asks her where she got it from and she lies. He pretends to go along with the whole thing but keeps asking whilst also trying to have sex with her and getting violent and pulling her hair. He absolutely plays with her, hurts her and tries to humiliate her. He does things like getting her to undress while like reading the article about her business prize out, because it turns out Atlas won a prize as well and he's mentioned in there, and then he references Lily in the article even though she's not actually named, and Ryle's really mad about that, so he's getting her to like strip off her clothes to be vulnerable, read out this thing that he's then getting mad about, and then hurting her while she does it. It's really horrible and difficult to read and it's disgusting. The problem is with the kind of sexual assault element in this, it actually ends up reading a lot like a Colleen Hoover sex scene in places, and that makes me really uncomfortable and is one of the reasons I hate Colleen Hoover's sex scenes so much. After reading the article, it turns out that Ryle went through all of Lily's stuff, and weirdly he didn't find the Ellen book that Atlas signed. That's a thing that he missed, so I don't know why that didn't come back up. But he did find all her old journals from being a teenager, and he read through everything, and that's how he knows that Atlas gave her the magnet, and that's why he's mad about the magnet. But it turns out this has been going on all afternoon. He's been reading through this stuff, he's been planning this stuff for when she gets home, and he's been planning a way to hurt and humiliate her. So Ryle, being the poor little victim he is, who would only ever hurt someone without knowing it during his blackouts, has orchestrated this whole thing to humiliate Lily in her own home, and he then sneaks up behind her and bites her tattoo on her collarbone, which is an homage to Atlas. This isn't a blackout. This is planned, premeditated abuse. This man is cruel and insane and irredeemable, and you cannot change my mind. This isn't just reactive emotion-fueled violence like some fans seem to believe. This was planned out sexual humiliation and premeditated physical assault. He has been planning this all afternoon, waiting for her to come home so he can hurt her. Ryle then attempts to rape Lily, but ends up headbutting her until she passes out. This is irredeemable. Of course, afterwards he's full of I'm sorry's and I love yous and all that crap. At this point, as soon as she can, Lily tries to escape from the home, from the relationship, from everything, but she realises she has no one to call and nowhere to go. He's isolated her from all her old work colleagues and friends. She doesn't want to call her mum because she's like, well, after everything she's been through, I can't talk to her about it. She can't go to Lily because, she can't go to Alyssa because, one, she's just had a new baby, and two, it's his sister. So who does she have? She has to call Atlas. It's the only person she has left. In chapter 4, Atlas takes Lily to the hospital where she's examined, and the doctors want to collect evidence for if she wants to press charges against Ryle, but Lily says she doesn't want that because she doesn't want to press charges, which is understandable. A lot of people, weirdly especially men, seem to judge people who don't want to press charges for sexual assaults and physical assaults and domestic violence and stuff like that, but it's a really invasive, emotional, I guess, like, procedure to go through. It's completely understandable why so many people don't want to. I had to get the police involved when I left Johnny because he started sending me death threats and it was getting really bad and I was petrified, and the police were my only option, and they were great. They were really, really lovely, like the particular officers I had on my case, but it was also really invasive. They comb through everything, texts, emails, photos. They ask you to tell every story over and over and over again. And it really does hurt to relive all that stuff so many times. And if I'd gone on to press charges further and, get him charged and take it to court and all that stuff, I'd have had to do that even more times. I'd have had to go over it again and again and again. Plus, his defense lawyers would then have turned around and questioned me and blamed me for everything happening and questioned my credibility and everything. And it would have been re-traumatizing all over again. And I didn't think I was physically strong enough to go through that. So I made the choice to not do that for my own mental health, which kind of sucks because it's like, well, he's getting away with it because he hurt me so much that I wasn't strong enough to fight back, And that's why I think it's completely understandable why so many victims don't want to press charges. I think that's why it's understandable why Lily didn't want to, although I'm not sure if this is why she didn't want to. I think it's because she didn't want to get Ryle in trouble, which is questionable. But anyway, not the point. Then there's also the reveal that, we can't do such and such a test on Lily because, what a surprise, she's pregnant. Because of course she is. I hate Colleen Hoover. She just can't leave a womb empty, can she? She doesn't know how. Atlas takes Lily back to his house where she showers, and that is where the chapter ends. Chapter 25 gives me conflicting feelings. Lily wakes up at Atlas's house and she decides to write a new letter to Ellen, a new diary entry to make sense of all her complicated thoughts and feelings. Very understandable. Yeah, completely relatable, fine. Now, this should be a really, really powerful part of the book, right? Maybe the most powerful part. Lily is finally realizing that the man she thought was the love of her life, her entire world, the center of her world, is an abuser. Is her abuser. She's starting to understand her mum and why she stayed for so long. She is starting to realize that, oh my god, my life is going to change forever. She's realizing that she needs to leave him. She's starting the healing process. This should be a really, really powerful, important part of the book. But Colleen Hoover's writing is not good enough to portray any of the important stuff well. And it's really, really disappointing. Instead, this letter ends up being full of cliches. It's juvenile. It's horrible to read. It takes you completely out of it. This is what I mean. This would be such an important book if it was written by a competent author. What should be a woman grappling with complex and confusing feelings ends up sounding like teenage melodrama. This is not the quality of writing that this topic deserves. It's not the quality of writing that this topic needs. Let me read you a few select passages. If I had to compare this feeling to something, I would compare it to death. Not just the death of anyone, the death of the one. It feels like Ryle has died. It's an astronomical amount of grief, an enormous amount of pain. Words can't express the amount of hatred I have for him, yet somehow in the midst of all my hatred, there are waves of reasoning that flow through me. Preventing your heart from forgiving someone you love is actually a hell of a lot harder than simply forgiving them. I'm a statistic now. The things I've thought about women like me are now what others would think of me if they knew my current situation. How could she love him after what he did to her? How could she contemplate taking him back? It's sad that those are the first thoughts that run through our minds when someone's abused. Shouldn't there be more distaste in our mouths for the abusers than those who continue to love the abusers? Absolutely yes on that last line, but the rest of it is cringe as hell. It deserves better. It needs better. Chapter 26 and the melodrama continues. I'm lying on Atlas's guest bed, staring up at the ceiling. It's a normal bed. Really comfortable, actually. But it feels like I'm on a waterbed. Or maybe a raft adrift at sea. And I scale over these huge waves, each of them carrying something different. Some are waves of sadness. Some are waves of anger. Some are waves of tears. Some are waves of sleep. I think Colleen was high when she wrote that. Not much happens in this chapter except they watch some Ellen together and Lily says this about Atlas. I don't like that I was never fully able to let him go no matter how hard I tried. I think about the fight with Ryle over Atlas's phone number. The fight about the magnet, the article, the things he read in my journal, the tattoo. None of that would have happened if I would have just let go of Atlas and thrown it all away. Ryle wouldn't have had anything to be so upset with me about. And okay, here's a controversial opinion, but this is why I don't think Atlas should have been in this book at all. He should not have been a character in this book, because here's the thing. While nothing Ryle did was okay or excusable, his emotion of jealousy was understandable. Lily still being in love with someone else, having tattoos of him on her body, taking gifts from him in secret, keeping secret phone numbers, that is a reason to be upset with your partner. That is perfectly reasonable to be upset over that. And the fact that these were the only triggers for Ryle's abuse other than the first occasion make it seem to some of the audience like this abuse was justifiable, which it was absolutely not. Truth is that what Lily did was wrong, but she did not cause the abuse. Ryle did. So with men like Ryle, they'll be abusive regardless. Anything can and will set them off, whether it's justified or not. And I wish this had been shown a bit more. The fact that there were 3 instances of abuse in this book, and 2 were set off by kind of understandable jealousy, is kind of a really dangerous portrayal of abuse. It leaves open the dangerous and unacceptable interpretation that Ryle was somehow justified in abusing Lily because, well, she did so-and-so first, so you know what I mean? And that's not okay to have some of your readers thinking and interpreting. Abuse is never justified and never okay, and I wish that had been shown a little more in this book. And that's why I wish there'd been no Atlas in this book at all. Because if there was no Atlas, there'd be no Lily still in love with him, there'd be no Lily hiding things from Ryle, no Lily basically nearly cheating on Ryle, any of that stuff. And you'd not be able to have anyone saying Ryle was justified in any way. Plus you'd have to have Lily save herself instead of Atlas saving her, and it'd be a much stronger, more meaningful book in my opinion. I know I was rambling there, so let me just make it a little bit more clear. Ryle's jealousy and upset was justifiable because of Lily's actions. But Ryle's physical abuse because of the jealousy was not justifiable. And sadly, when you have the justifiable jealousy setting off the abuse, some people get them confused and think the abuse is justifiable, and that's not okay. Does that make sense? I'll talk about this a little bit more at the end when I conclude all my thoughts. Chapter 27, and Lily is understandably afraid to go into work. I know what this is like. I was afraid to go home the day that I left Johnny. He, again, threatened to kill me, and he was threatening to be waiting for me at home, and I was petrified. Oh, it was horrible. Point is, I get what Lily feels here. This is her space, and she doesn't know what to expect. He could be in there at any time, and halfway through the day, her fear is... It comes true. Ryle shows up at her workplace. As soon as I see him, I turn stone cold. I'm standing behind the counter, my hand on the cash register because it's close to the stapler. I'm sure a stapler couldn't do much harm against the arms of a neurosurgeon, but I'll use what I have. Yeah, this is a pretty realistic response. You're terrified, your mind is just like, protect yourself any way you can. Yeah, understandable. Annoyingly, Ryle doesn't even try to apologise this time. He just tells her to go home and stay there while he's working in England for 3 months. I'm in England, we don't want you here, go back. There's lots of commands in what he says. It's like, you do this, you do this, you do that. Like, no requests, no questions, nothing. He's just like, go home, do this, I hate him. Okay, chapter 28, and Atlas's friends come over to play poker. Lily joins them and learns Atlas's supposed girlfriend, Cassie, is fake. She never existed. She doesn't exist. Okay. In that case, I take back all my sympathy for her. She's fictional even in the fictional world, so... Eventually, now that Ryle is temporarily gone over in England, Atlas takes Lily home, and they agree not to be romantic because I have a lot to work through, Atlas, a lot, and I'm scared I won't be able to do it with you in my life. There's a lot I wish I could say to him, but we both know discussing the two of us isn't appropriate at this point. I'm married. I'm pregnant with another man's baby, and he's standing in the living room of an apartment that another man bought for me. I'd say these aren't very good conditions in which to bring up all the things we should have said to each other a long time ago. And at this point I was like, oh, this is surprising, but good. I like this woman saving herself thing. After that kind of trauma, you do need to be alone a while. You do need to heal, so I'm glad that Colleen Hoover didn't just stick her straight back with Atlas. She's giving her time alone. I really liked that, and I thought that would be a great, great ending to the book. I was quite happy at this point. But it's all ruined with this cliched melodramatic monologue from Atlas. Lily. He whispers, still holding me tightly. I know this is the last thing you need to hear right now, but I have to say it because I've walked away from you too many times without saying what I really want to say. He pulls back to look down at me, and when he sees my tears, he brings his hands up to my cheeks. In the future, wait, no, hands, not fists. In the future, if by some miracle you ever find yourself in a position to fall in love again, fall in love with me. He presses his lips against my forehead. You're still my favourite person, Lily. Always will be. Mate, you barely even know her at this point. It's That's what I think of this book. Chapter 29! Lily is busy continuing her life as normal and visiting Alyssa and the baby and pretending like nothing's happened. It's been 6 weeks since Ryle left for England and no one knows what happened between us. Ryle hasn't told anyone and neither have I. Everyone, my mother included, simply believes he left for study at Cambridge and that nothing has changed between us. I also still haven't told anyone about the pregnancy. Then, for reasons and stuff, Alyssa tricks Lily into telling her what's happening with Ryle and bleh. Lily says, I don't know where to start. She squeezes my hand but says nothing. For the next 15 minutes I tell her everything. I tell her about the fight, I tell her about Atlas picking me up, I tell her about the hospital, I tell her about the pregnancy. I tell her about how for the last 6 weeks I cry myself to sleep every night because I've never felt so alone and so scared. And while I'm finished telling her everything, we're both crying. She hasn't responded to what I've told her with anything other than the occasional, oh, Lily. She doesn't have to respond though. Ryle is her brother. I know she wants me to take his past into consideration just like the last time it happened. I know she'll want me to work things out with him because he's her brother. We're supposed to be one big happy family. I know exactly what she's thinking. She's quiet for a long time and she struggles through everything I've told her. She finally lifts her eyes to mine and squeezes my hands. My brother loves you, Lily. He loves you so much. You've changed his entire life and made him someone that I never thought he could be. As a sister, I wish more than anything that you could find a way to forgive him. But as your best friend, I have to tell you that if you take him back, I will never speak to you again. And I was like, thank God she's finally showing a little bit of common sense. Finally! Listen to this woman, Lily. Listen to her, this time. In chapter 30, Lily heads home one day at 20 weeks pregnant, only to, oh my God, find Ryle waiting for her there in the house. And because she has a little Baba bump now, which is definitely a real baby and not a food baby, he's like, oh my God, you're pregnant, you're pregnant, you're you're having a baby.
Are these systems of being pregnant? Girlfriend ain't had periods since she got pre-gat.
Weirdly, she feels sympathy for Ryle. As I follow Ryle into my bedroom, I wonder what that must be like, to have no idea what might set you off or how bad your reaction will be, to have absolutely no control over your emotions. Well, funnily enough, she kind of does know what it's like because she was living with the effects of that. She was walking on eggshells all the time. She didn't know what might set him off or how bad his reaction would be. That's hell enough. Yeah, sure, it's scary maybe to know how you won't react to something, but not knowing how other people react and that reaction could be killing you is a little worse, I'm gonna say. I'm sorry if I don't have any sympathy for Ryle. He has the cheek to tell her, Lily, you have no idea. I'm so sorry. You have no idea what I've been through these past 2 months knowing what I've done to you. Thankfully, she knows this is absolute crap and what she's been through is so much worse, so good on her for properly calling it out. I think a lot of us wish we could say something like that to our abusers. In chapter 31, Lily offers to babysit Alyssa's kid. She feels her baby kick. There's more mothering propaganda and it's sickening. Lily, Alyssa says, I've been wanting to say something to you. I know you're sad you're going through all this without my brother. No matter how involved he is, I just want you to know that this is going to be the best thing you've ever experienced in your life. You're going to be a great mom, Lily. The baby's really lucky. I vomit and the chapter ends. This book really could have been like 150 pages shorter. I'm exhausted. Chapter 32, and this interested me a bit because again I saw parallels with my own experience. I hope you guys don't mind me like sharing so much my own story with you. I just think it's important to normalize talking about this stuff and not feeling ashamed of it and letting other people know that they're not alone because other people have been through it too, you know? So in this chapter, why are words hard? In this chapter, Lily is worried about telling her mum about breaking up with Ryle and everything he did to her. And she says, I don't know how she'll take it. I know she'll be excited about the pregnancy, but I don't know how she'll feel about me and Ryle splitting up. She loves Ryle, and based on her history with these types of situations, she'll probably find it very easy to excuse his behaviour and try and convince me to take him back. And in all honesty, that's part of the reason I've been stalling this, because I'm scared there's a chance she might be successful. I had a very difficult experience with my own mother after everything with Johnny. She didn't even ask how I was doing or coping with any of it for months after it happened, and that really, really hurt me. It really, really did. And it's something that I'm kind of still getting over. I'm still very upset with her for. When I finally brought it up with her and we did talk, she said that the things I'd said Johnny did to me reminded her of my dad and the things he'd done to her, so I can understand why it was difficult for her too, I guessed. But then she also kept kind of blaming me. She kept going on about how she didn't like the look of him and how I should have known, and it felt really victim blamey, and it upset me even more. It hurt me a lot. So that's something I struggled with my own mother. So I related to Lily's fear of talking to her mum about it, but for different reasons, you know? This line from Lily really, really stuck with me. I hate it when she's sad, and telling her I married a man who might be like my father is going to make her really sad. That kind of hit me a bit. I do think sometimes as kids we spend so long cleaning up after our parents' issues and problems, and that really does take a toll on us, that when we have our own problems we don't want to be more of a burden on them, you know? So I related to that. When Lily finally does tell her mum's great, and her mum says one of the most relatable parts of the book, and I really, really liked this bit. We all have a limit, what we're willing to put up with before we break. When I married your father, I knew exactly what my limit was. But slowly, with every instant, my limit was pushed a little more and a little more. The first time your father hit me, he was immediately sorry. He swore it had never happened again. The second time he hit me, he was even more sorry. The third time it happened, it was more than a hit. It was a beating. And every single time I took him back. But the fourth time it was only a slap. And when that happened, I felt relieved. I remember thinking, at least he didn't beat me this time. That wasn't so bad. She brings a napkin up to her eyes and says, every instant chips away at your limit. Every time you choose to stay, it makes the next time that much harder to leave. Eventually you lose sight of your limit altogether, because you start to think, I've lasted 5 years now, what's 5 more? And that's exactly what it's like, and I thought that was a really, really important part of the book, and really good, really well written. I liked that bit, I thought it was great. Combined with what Lily says, which was, we were so good together. The times I spent with him were some of the best moments of my life, and occasionally I feel like maybe I don't want to give that up. That was also really relatable, because like, that's the thing with people like this. When it's good, it's so good, you know? You're tricked into thinking that those few good times make up for all the pain, but in reality they don't. They really, really don't. When you're in a relationship like that, you start to think of the good and bad as being almost like transactional. You're like, well, you know, we had 4 bad instances this week, 4 bad arguments, but Saturday night was spectacular, so that makes up for it, right? You know, 4-1, that's a good ratio, and you start thinking like, well, you know, the good is really, really good, which means it's worth this amount of pain and this level of pain and so on. And you get used to that and it becomes normal. But then you get away and you get free and you realise how good life can be without any of that pain. Or you meet someone else and you have those same amazing highs and wonderful moments and they're spectacular nights, but you don't have to pay for it, you know? You just get them because your partner's good and kind and wonderful, and you don't have to pay for it in tears or pain or compromising or flesh. It's just good. And abusers will make you think that you can't get the good without the bad, but that's not true. You can, and you will, and you deserve to. Never let an abuser make you think they're worth it, because they're not. They're absolutely not. Chapter 33 is boring. Lily has a baby shower. Ryle crashes the after-non party and builds a crib. Boring. Let's move on. Chapter 34. Stupidly, Lily invites Ryle around to look at the newly decorated nursery. There's a reason therapists recommend no contact with abusers as the best way to heal from abuse and move on and that sort of thing, but of course that's not always possible when there are kids involved, but I still think it's worth saying and encouraging. We are nearly at the end of the book now, and Colleen Hoover tries one final attempt to humanise Ryle, and I hate it. I don't know what you want from me, Lily. I don't know what role you want me to have. I'm trying to give you all the space you need, but at the same time, I want to help more than you possibly know. I want to be in our baby's life. I want to be your husband. I want to be good at it. But I have no idea what's going through your heads. Well, I would guess her head is saying, please don't let this violent man kill me or my child, but that's just a guess. What about us? He whispers. I lean my head back and sigh. I knew this question would come, but it's really difficult to give him an answer I don't have. Divorce or reconciliation are really the only 2 options we have, but neither is a choice I want to make. Oh, just do it. Divorce him. Do it. Chapter 35, and Lily has let Ryle live back in the house with her because she's an idiot, but then her waters break, so yay, she's having a baby. Labour happens, that's a thing. Ryle decides this is the perfect time to get an erection over her pregnant belly, and I've decided that in verity, Jeremy wasn't the one with the breeding kink. Colleen Hoover is the one with the breeding kink. Colleen Hoover gets off on being pregnant, and because it's her, I'm shaming her for it. Shame, Colleen. Shame. For once, Colleen doesn't cut away from the action happening on the page, so we get gems like, my contractions are less than a minute apart when we arrive, and I'm dilated to a 9. Great. Thanks. Lily has a baby girl, okay. They call the baby Emerson after the brother that Ryle killed, so that makes me want to burn this book even more. Then, right there and then, Lily asks for a divorce. She's like, okay, pushed out the baby, it's in my arms, divorce me, bitch, or I'm divorcing you, bitch. Something. I just want her to call Ryle a bitch, that's all. Lily resorts to emotional blackmail, which normally I wouldn't recommend, but in this case it's effective and it makes sense. Although it does annoy me that men don't take violence against women seriously until it affects them. If you have to turn around and say to someone, but what if it happened to your daughter, to your mother, to your sister, for them to be able to understand, then maybe they're just lacking human compassion. Why does it need to affect them and their family personally for them to understand something? That annoys me, but it does work, so let's keep using it for as long as we have to. I begin to cry because this is hurting me as much as it's hurting him. Ryle, I say gently, what would you do if one of these days this little girl looked up at you and she said, Daddy, my boyfriend hit me. What would you say to her, Ryle? What if she came to you and said, Daddy, my husband pushed me down the stairs. He said it was an accident. What should I do? What if she came to you and said, my husband tried to rape me, Daddy. He held me down while I begged him to stop, but he swears he'll never do it again. What should I do, Daddy? And apparently this finally gets through to Ryle, and he's like, oh my god, I understand why you have to divorce me now, okay. Why do men think it's okay to do these things to their wives, their girlfriends, their partners, but not for someone else to do it to their daughters? I think it's still rooted in misogyny and the fact that men feel like they have some sort of claim over their daughters, or they own them in some way and they don't want another man defiling their property, that sort of thing. But yeah, it's annoying. Lily says, my mother went through it. I went through it. I'll be damned if I allow my daughter to go through it. I kiss her on the forehead and make a promise. It ends with us. And yeah, that's where we get the book title from. How original. That's the last chapter. Finally, the epilogue. 11 months later, Lily and Ryle are co-parenting so happily like nothing ever happened. Yay! They're apart, but they're happy. Lily bumps into Atlas on the street and he's like, come to my restaurant, and that's about it, until then she drops the kid off with Ryle and then runs back to Atlas and literally runs. I'm out of breath, panting and nervous. I've got to tell you Emerson's middle name. I put my hand on my hips and exhale. It's Dory! Kill me, please. Then Lily decides she's ready for a relationship with Atlas and he tells her, you can stop swimming now, Lily. We finally reached the shore. I vomit profusely and this book ends. Okay, final thoughts, a conclusion. I've basically written a short essay here. Oh god, I have so many thoughts. Where do I even start? I'm going to mostly read from my script here because I have so many thoughts summarising everything I think of this book. Overall, there are parts of this book that I didn't hate. I feel like it was good for a Colleen Hoover book, but not good by the standards of all the books in the world, you know? Let's start with the things I liked. I think it's an important story that needs to be told, and I'm glad domestic violence is being treated as seriously as it is. I also like that the book is so popular because hopefully now it will help other people understand what we as victims of domestic violence and abuse go through, and some of the struggles we face in those situations, and some of the difficult choices we have to make. I liked the parallels between Lily and her mum's experiences, even if they were handled heavy-handedly. I liked that it showed at least some of the reasons why women choose to stay with these men. I'm glad it showed that there are still good times in between the abuse, and how those are the times that trick you into staying and thinking things have changed and will get better even when they haven't and they don't. However, this is only ever shown by Lily telling us the times are good and telling us how much she loved Ryle. Colleen Hoover's writing is terrible, so the good times really don't seem that good. It's annoying. I struggle to see any redeeming features or characteristics in Ryle other than he's supposedly attractive, you know? What I also thought was good is I think Ryle's dialogue is very realistic when he's grovelling and manipulating, trying to get her back. That was pretty spot on. However, there are plenty of other things I hated about this book. For example, the whole baby with Ryle plot. I really, really hate the ending of this book so much. That epilogue in particular is horrific. God, I hate that Lily stayed so friendly with Ryle and that they both get this happily ever after. Ryle didn't deserve that. Please stop making out like co-parenting with an abuser is easy. For thousands of women, it's not. I've said before, no contact is the best way to deal with abusers, so you get them out of your life and they can't hurt you anymore. You can move on, you can heal. They don't deserve to still be in your life. If they've hurt you once, they can hurt you again, whether they're sleeping with you or not. Obviously and annoyingly, Lily couldn't just go no contact because of the baby, although I kind of still wish she had, which is just another reason that I hate that Colleen Hoover threw this baby plot in the book last minute. I would much rather have had an ending where Lily cut him off completely and his entire family and moved on to have this happy, new, wonderful group of friends who won't hide the fact their brother is a violent narcissist until after you marry them, you know? I would like to have seen her have a clean break and start over. I was also slightly disappointed that it took Lily having a baby to decide not to get back with Ryle. It made that choice all about her protecting someone else, the baby, instead of protecting herself. But she deserves protection too. Lily deserves protection. She deserves to be able to stand up for herself and say, no, I deserve better than this. I also hated that Lily ended up with Atlas in that epilogue. I felt like Atlas as a character, as I've said, was unnecessary in the whole book. The whole book would have been better off without him in so many ways, and the book's message would have been stronger if she'd been happy alone. I also hate that he's made out to be some sort of hero when he clearly groomed Lily when she was a kid. This is played off as some sort of epic romance, but no, she was a 15-year-old child and he was a grown man. He groomed her and waited until she turned 16 so he could legally stick his penis in her, and then he disappeared off for 8 years. That's not cute, that's grooming. Another thing I really hated about this book was how privileged everyone in it was. They're all at the top of their field, they all have so much money, they're millionaires, they can do this and this and this and blah blah blah. Yes, it was great for Lily because it made leaving her abuser so much easier, but that's not the most realistic thing. Most women in that situation don't have those resources. Not all of us have millionaire friends, not all of us have abusers who will buy us houses and leave us there to live in them rent-free, you know? Not all of us have friends with big fancy houses that we can go and run away and stay in. I was incredibly lucky in my situation that I was financially independent. I had my own place. I could get away and I still had my safety net. But I was the exception to millions of women. And Lily's character is even more of the exception, you know? Most victims, their abusers make them financially dependent on them. Without their abusers, so many victims have no home, no money, no job, no nothing. Sometimes they'll hold, abusers will like hold people's kids against them and stuff like that, and it's hard for so many women. Victims who want to leave don't always have the ability to, and when they do, it sometimes takes months of planning, and even then, if they're found out, it can be dangerous. There's statistics that show that the most likely time for an abuser to kill his partner is when they're trying to leave them. I would have liked this book to cover a little more about what it's like for real women, not just rich white women. Like, if you want to leave Lily's character the same, then just have her do something like have her go visit a support group and hear from other survivors. Just don't make it seem like it's as easy as, well, I'll just choose to leave today, alright, bye. Because not everyone has that choice. Another thing I thought was really bad is that the overall pacing of the book was terrible, and it had too many unnecessary sex scenes that just dragged on for far too long. They were boring and really kind of creepy and gross in the whole context, you know? But seriously, the book was like 50% trying to convince us that this was a love story, the next 40% with Lily making excuses for Ryle, and then only the last 5% of her stopping making excuses and actually leaving him. Only 5% actually calls out the fact that abuse is bad, and that really bothers me. I want more of a focus on that last section. I want the first bit to be a lot shorter and more on that last bit there where she leaves. I want the audience and the reader to feel empowered when they finish the book. This is so rushed and it's such a small focus that you don't really get that. I had this idea for, you know, the book is split into 2 parts. In the first part you have these like flashbacks through the journal entries. I would love if the second part had flash forward scenes to, like, let's say 10 years in the future, and Lily is thriving and living a happy, successful life. Maybe she's still in therapy and she's working through trauma. Maybe she's working with a charity to help other women escape domestic abuse situations and domestic violence. Maybe we can see parallels between, like, Lily's situation unfolding with Ryle and the women she's helping in the future. It would be really cool to see, like, how did Lily respond in the moment, and how in the future does she respond to women coming to her with the same problems, and how does she help them out based on her own experience and that sort of thing. That is the book I want to read. That would have been so much better, but I don't think Colleen Hoover has the skill to write that, unfortunately. For me, as it stands, there is far too much of a focus on the romance aspect of this book, And in that sense, it does feel like it glamorizes abuse to an extent, which concerns me greatly. I think it also puts into perspective so many of Colleen Hoover's other books on why they're problematic. So let's put the overt abuse scenes aside for a second and talk about the romance scenes throughout the book. The ones where everything is supposedly fine and happy and good. And I'm talking about both romance scenes between Lily and Ryle and Lily and Atlas. There are so many toxic, dangerous, harmful behaviours played off as passionate and romantic, and these are identical to behaviours we've seen from other love interests in other Colleen Hoover books. Ryle and Atlas both lock Lily in rooms at different times and stop her from leaving. Jeremy also does this with the two women in Verity. Both men, Ryle and Atlas, grab Lily by the wrists and restrain her at times without her consent, but these are played off as sexy, passionate actions. There's a lot of jealousy and controlling behaviour that's portrayed as, oh, I just can't resist you, you're so perfect and wonderful, and so on. With Ryle's character, we could argue that Hoover was showing us that Ryle had all these subtle red flags from the beginning, but then why does Atlas display the same red flags, but they're supposed to be good and loving in him, but warning signs in Ryle? Why does every male love interest of Colleen Hoover's display these same behaviours across a number of books? It seems to me like Colleen Hoover doesn't know what a healthy relationship looks like, and she's built her career of portraying toxic relationships and abuse as romance, love, and passion, and that is incredibly dangerous for her young, impressionable fans, as we'll see at the very end of this video. Another thing I really hate about this book is how Hoover tries to give Ryle an excuse for his abuse. He didn't mean to do it. He's just traumatized from his childhood. He has these blackouts. Boo-hoo. What a poor man. He's as much the victim in this situation as Lily is. No, he's not. Stop it. It makes no sense. What does him accidentally killing his brother as a 6-year-old have to do with him throwing women down the stairs as a 30-year-old? It doesn't. I feel like Colleen Hoover just wanted to throw something in to make Ryle a sympathetic character, and that undermines the whole message of the book and how bad abuse is, and that really annoys me. There's never an excuse for domestic violence, but here Colleen Hoover is making one up. Also, let's just point out here, because of the blackouts, a major issue with the ending. Let's say Ryle really does have blackouts and doesn't know what he's doing. So why would you leave an 11-month baby alone with him? It's not just the excuses for the abuse that frustrate me though, it's the portrayal of it in general. I don't think this book did enough to show the subtleties of abuse, the everyday things that make you constantly fearful and walk on eggshells because you don't know what's going to set your partner off. I think this would have been extremely useful to show in The Father, because those everyday forms of abuse become so normal when you're seeing them as a kid that you don't even realise they're bad until you're a lot older. Sure, there are a lot of red flags with Ryle, as I said, but it's hard to know what Colleen wanted to show us as a red flag and what she was trying to portray as romance, because she made the other love interest, Atlas, show the same red flags, but it was romance in him. I'd have liked to see a few of the smaller, more controlling things which don't seem so bad individually but all add up. Maybe controlling what Lily wears or who she's allowed to see, subtle forms of emotional manipulation, so show us some subtle gaslighting or how Ryle responds to things with silent treatment or stonewalling. Show us small acts of violence as well as the big ones. Show us how it builds slowly over time and becomes more and more extreme as the abuser realises they can get away with more and more. There are only 3 major incidents of abuse with Ryle and Lily: pushing so hard she fell and hit her head, pushing her down the stairs, and an attempted rape. These are bad, of course they're bad, then they should be called out, but I also think it's important to show that abuse isn't just these extreme examples. It's the little things that build up day after day and wear you down and tire you out and make you constantly live in fear. You don't need to be bleeding for it to be abuse. You don't need to have nearly died for it to be abuse. The little things count too. This is another reason why I wish we'd seen like a recovering Lily visit support groups and speak with other survivors, maybe visiting a therapist or something like that. Just anything more than what we got. My final big issue with this book is the marketing. God, the marketing. Why is this book marketed as romance? Why does the plot summary seem to make out like it's a story about a love triangle? Why is there no content warning on this book? Why is domestic violence treated as a, ooh, shocking twist that you didn't see coming? If I hadn't already known what this book was about because my YouTube commenters told me before I read it, then this book would have messed me up really, really badly and brought back a lot of bad memories. I think a lot of people turn to romance for comfort, for a light read, for something to, you know, bring their mood up a bit, and I think if they'd gone into this expecting romance, only to get this kind of violent domestic abuse storyline as a shocking twist, I just think that's really, really harmful. It feels like Colleen Hoover cared more about surprising the audience than being respectful of the audience. I don't think domestic violence should ever be portrayed in this way, as this like kind of gimmicky, shocking, oh my god, can you believe it kind of thing. I think it needs to be handled sensitively and respectfully and not like this. Finally, let's talk about the upcoming film. So they're making a film of It Ends With Us. In it, you've got Blake Lively playing Lily, Justin Baldoni as Ryle, and Brandon Skelnar as Atlas. Many people are mad because they've aged up the characters a bit. Because, you know, like, Justin is 39 in real life, Blake Lively's 35, all that sort of thing. I don't mind that so much, but a lot of fans are very, very angry. As you might have noticed, one of the things I really didn't like in the book was that Lily was so young. She's 23, 24 by the end of the book. Ryle is in his early 30s. He's my age. That's already a problematic age gap, so I'm glad that in the film they're probably making that age gap a lot smaller and less problematic. Hopefully that means the characters are closer together in age. Secondly, I think when you have the victim be such a young character, you run the risk of it being seen, well, she only let the abuse happen because she was so young and naive and blah blah blah. But it doesn't work like that. You can be any age, any person from any background, you can be any gender, and you can be the victim of abuse. It can happen to anyone, and I think maybe by aging the characters up a bit in the film, you can at least show that you're never too old to fall for the tricks of an abuser. It can happen to absolutely anyone, so I don't mind that so much. I'm fine with the characters not being as young as they are in the book. Another thing the fans are mad about are the costumes, specifically for Lily, and I kind of see it based on the photos. They're quite ugly. The thing is, like, some of these individual pieces are gorgeous. Like this yellow jacket. I want that yellow jacket. I love it. I need it. The trousers on their own, really cool. But who put them together? Who is doing this? The shoes with the trousers? Oh, God. Beautiful individual pieces do not work together. Whoever's doing the styling on this film, oh, but that's a petty little rant. That said, it's not like the book ever describes anything about what Lily wears or how she dresses or anything other than that she has red hair, so how is this inauthentic, you know? Honestly, it's costumes. It's not really a big deal. I think this film has far more important things to worry about. I'm more concerned with things like, how are they going to market this film? Who are they marketing it to? What genre is this supposed to be? Is it going to be portrayed as romance, rom-com, as a dark, gritty drama, a thriller, something in between? I don't know, and I worry. Who is this film actually for? Who do they see the target audience being? A lot of Colleen Hoover fans are very young. A lot of them are on TikTok, and we know that has like a young demographic in general. So who is this film for? That's my worry. And on the subject of fans and stuff, I finally decided to look up some of the reviews of this book to see if I was overreacting, but it turns out no, I'm not. The way some of these reviewers talk about Ryle's character in particular proves to me that Colleen Hoover really, really missed the mark so badly in this book. One review from Goodreads says, Ryle is a charming guy. He's a giving person. He's got a lot of great attributes. I'm not sure if I've ever felt so conflicted over a character as I did him. No, he's not. No, he doesn't. And you should not walk away from a book about domestic violence feeling conflicted about the abuser. I'm sorry, but this is one situation where I can't be all like, ooh, shades of grey, he's a human too. If you don't see a perpetrator of domestic violence as the bad guy, oh god, the author's doing it wrong. You shouldn't feel conflicted about a man who beats and tries to rape his wife. I don't care what great attributes you think he has. That's something that's not conflicting for me. That's just bad. I get not wanting a one-dimensional villain. I get that completely. I love dark, complex characters. And that's the thing about abusers. There's a reason you fall from in the first place. There's a reason you stay. They can be charming and fun and make you feel like the most special person in the world. And we should show this side to the audience in books like this. That's important. But it's also important that they realise coming away from the book that all those good characteristics were surface level. A lot of them were fake, and they do not in any way make up for the abuse. Another reviewer writes, "In the end, I felt sorry for Ryle, for losing the love of his life, for destroying his only chance at happiness. I don't forgive him. I just wish that a magic wand would make everything better." Another reviewer writes, "I'll be honest, it was hard to hate Ryle. Even after everything he did, there was a piece of me who hoped he could change." The Reddit reviews are just as problematic, like this person who says, "If it reaches to a reader whose story resonates that of Lily, or who finishes the book feeling compassion and understanding for everyone involved in the story, minus Lily's dad, F him, who are we to say it's not a good book?" To which I have to say, why? Why do you have understanding and compassion for every character, including Ryle, but not Lily's dad? And it all comes down to how Colleen Hoover wrote this. She wanted us to forgive the hot, charismatic abuser because he had trauma, but not the boring old dad abuser because he wasn't hot and the reader couldn't think about having sex with him, right? What if the dad had trauma too? I mean, he probably did. Would he have been forgiven then? Would you have had understanding and compassion for him then? Why did Colleen Hoover decide we should pity one abuser and not the other? Because in my mind, screw them both. This is the danger with how Colleen Hoover wrote this book. She places abusers in two categories: forgivable abuse and unforgivable abuse. And in my mind, there's no such thing as forgivable abuse. Then there's the TikTok comments. Oh my god. These concerned me a lot. Not gonna lie, I wanted her to forgive Ryle. Ryle isn't even that bad. He just went through a lot in his childhood and doesn't know how to express it. That one had over 1,500 likes. Like, oh my god, he really did love her, but he just didn't know how to express it. And when he tried, it ended up all wrong. God, the grammar on these is terrible. These have to be children writing these comments, right? I get what you're saying, because I feel like if Lily didn't have all the Atlas stuff, he never would have done those things, but that still doesn't excuse him. So you remember my rant earlier about how Atlas's inclusion makes some people think that Ryle was justified because he was jealous? This is why Atlas is a terrible character and shouldn't be in the book. And then you also have TikToks like this, where young women and girls are acting out scenes of Ryle being abusive. Or the jokes about Ryle pushing Lily down the stairs. Or the people who are like, "Oh, I have It Ends With Us merch," and then showing a photo of their staircase. How is this okay? How can anyone think this book is helping and reducing the stigma around domestic violence when its fans are creating content like this and acting like it's all some sort of big joke? Also, Colleen Hoover tried to bring out a colouring book based on this book. A colouring book of domestic violence. This just angers me and infuriates me, and this has been a very, very difficult video to write and make and film, and now I'm gonna have to edit for many, many hours, but oh god, yeah, okay. That's where I'm done for today. If you've made it through this far, thank you very, very much. If you'd like to help support my channel, I do have Patreon, where you can go and join our Discord server and chat with me over there, and all my other lovely viewers and Patreon supporters. At the higher tiers, I also have exclusive stickers and prints that get sent out to you every 3 months, so they're really, really fun. But, you know, obviously only support me if you're able to, but every little does help and keeps me being able to make videos and stuff like that. So yeah, thanks a lot. I am very tired. I need to go and rest my voice now because I am in pain. I've been filming since 5 o'clock and it's now 10 to 11, so this is fun. I took half an hour off for a meal, but other than that, I've been talking straight through for, God, 5.5 hours. Okay, right, I'm done. Thank you for watching today. I appreciate you guys ever so much. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. I hope this video wasn't too dark for you, and I will try and come back with something a little bit lighter next time. But for now, thank you so much for watching.